set on this side? Nope. All set? No. All set? This meeting will come to order. This is a regular meeting of the Planning Board, which has been postponed from the regular August 10 date. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. First item are the minutes of the regular meeting of July 10th. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the minutes of the July 10th meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Next are the minutes of the special meeting of July 24th. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the minutes of the special meeting of July 24th. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next are the minutes of the site visit of July 30th. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve these minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. One abstention, please. Motion passes. Next are the minutes of the special meeting of July 31st. We have a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion to approve the special meeting minutes of July 31st. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item is correspondence. First is a memo of the town planner dated July 19th, 2019 regarding administrative subdivision approval, Samuel's Realty Company, Inc., involving property at 698 and 710 Aquidneck Avenue, Plat 114, lots 107 and 107B. May I have a motion to receive?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to receive this correspondence. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Correspondence is received. Next is an email correspondence from Sheila Nyland, 163 Morrison Avenue, dated July 23rd, 2019, regarding the proposed Morrison Farm subdivision. May I have a motion to receive this correspondence?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to receive. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Correspondence is received. Third is a memo of the town administrator dated July 31st, 2019 regarding controlling litter in Middletown. May I have a motion to receive?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to receive this correspondence. Any discussion?
Is this not on the agenda for later on tonight?
Yes, it is. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Correspondence is received. Next are continuances. Item 4B, public hearing. Prospect Avenue subdivision, Eugene Goldstein applicant. Request for combined preliminary and final plan approval for a proposed 8-lot major subdivision of property fronting on Prospect Avenue. The property is identified as Assessors Plat 121 NW, Lot 66A, and is located approximately 0.3 miles to the east of the intersection of Prospect Avenue and Aquidneck Avenue. Mr. Martland.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Martland from the offices of Silva, Thomas, Martland, and Offenberg. I'd request that that matter be continued to the September 11th meeting of the board. Today, our expert regarding the wells submitted a response to Mr. Cabral's comments. I think that ought to give enough time for Mr. Cabral to review those comments or responses, and we'll be able to proceed at the 11th.
Thank you. May I have a motion to continue this item to the September 11th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to continue this item to the September 11th meeting. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I have some.
Please.
Based on a memorandum from the planner, from Steve Cabral, looking at the second paragraph, 2.2, and I'll read it. Our research indicates that assumption of 10 inches per year of recharge into bedrock is higher than expected. We concur that 10 inches per year of recharge into till is reasonable, but the percentage of till recharge that infiltrates into the underlying bedrock varies. Studies have indicated that bedrock recharge can vary to 2 inches per year or less. Therefore, without additional data to justify the 10 inches per year bedrock recharge, we would recommend that the monthly water balance analysis in Table 1 be updated. So I would recommend that that be included and be able to be presented to us at the next meeting.
Yes, it's actually been responded to. I've submitted Mr. Aldinger's responses to the planner today, and I know that a copy has been sent to Mr. Cabral.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The matter is continued to the September 11th meeting. The next item is 4C, public hearing. Application of Jack Gullison for development plan review, including requests for waivers from certain design standards from the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, Section 521, for construction of a new commercial building to include an 18-room hotel with a restaurant and associated site work located on property identified as 59 Aquidneck Avenue, Assessors Plat 115 SE, Lot 169. Is there anyone to speak for this? You have a motion to continue this item.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to continue this item to the September 11th meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is continued to the September 11th meeting. The third item is item 5C. Public informational meeting. Request of 288 Vaucluse LLC for master plan approval of a 4-lot subdivision, including proposed new roads and request for waivers from certain provisions, Article 5 and Article 6 of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land. The property fronts on Vaucluse Avenue and Summerfield Lane and is located approximately 1,000 feet south of the intersection of Vaucluse Avenue and Peckham Avenue, Assessors Plat 129, Lot 210. May I have a motion to continue this item to the September 11th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded to continue this item. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is continued to the September 11th meeting. Next item for discussion is item 4A. Public hearing, request of Brennan Realty LLC, Bernadette Realty LLC, and Mark Byrne Realty LLC for preliminary plan approval, including requests for waivers from certain provisions of the subdivision and land development regulations for a proposed 11-lot major subdivision of property fronting on Mitchell's Lane. The property is identified as 430 Mitchell's Lane, Assessors Plat 124, lots 13, 14, 14A, 15, and is located approximately 1,300 feet to the north of the intersection of Mitchell's Lane and Fayal Lane. The public hearing is still open on this item. Well, who is the applicant? Mr. Silva?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. For the record, anyway, Robert M. Silva from the firm of Silva, Thomas, Martland, and Orphenberg, representing the applicant here, Brennan Realty LLC, et cetera. We've been before the board on a number of occasions. This, as you know, is a residential subdivision for single-family homes. I think we last met officially on the 5th of June, and we decided to continue the matter for further information to be submitted to the planning board. And in fact, the major development that hadn't taken place yet was we were required to redesign, or asked to redesign, the leaching field. And in order to do that, we met with Mr. Cabral from Crossman Engineering, and then we put the revised plans together and resubmitted them to the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, which has the jurisdiction to approve septic systems. And up until this morning, we had not been able to get a response from RIDEM. However, I'm glad to report that tonight I brought in a box of information, if you will, and we provided the approval of the revised plans by RIDEM, and I believe Rita was able to give you a copy of a packet, which includes the revised plan that was submitted and approved by RIDEM, as well as a correspondence from Mr. Demers, who's an engineer with Dupree, and with Chris Duhamel. They're both working on this project. And Chris submitted a response to a comment that Steve Cabral had made, wanting to know some additional input values showing changes in the mounding of the height. That was sent in, and that's now a part of the record. So we have, from my perspective, we've provided all the documentation that was yet unavailable, but is now. I feel that we've met all the checklist items. We've responded to all the concerns or issues raised by Crossman Engineering, and at the time of the last meeting, a number of the members indicated that we had presented a significant amount of information and wanted time to review it, so that's why we put it over to tonight. So I don't have anything further to submit. I do have my engineers, Mr. Duhamel and Mr. Ferrari, back here because the board indicated it didn't need everybody else, traffic and real estate, but they wanted the engineers here, and they're with me.
Thank you. Before I open this to public comment and even to comments from the board, I'd like to hear comments from Mr. Cabral of Crossman Engineering.
Hello. Again, I'm Steve Cabral with Crossman Engineering, 151 Centerville Road, Warwick. And we were hired by the town to do an independent peer review of the design. And just to clarify, I'm not opposed, or I'm not in favor of the development. My mission is just to give an independent review of especially technical issues so that y'all are better equipped to make a decision. At the last hearing, at the day before, or a couple of days before the hearing, we received a new package of the septic system design. And the day after the planning board meeting, I believe in June, we noticed some issues with the septic system design. And since that time, the designers and the design team have been very accommodating, as they always are. You know, when we have a comment, they're usually quick to do their best to respond. They usually don't push back and say, no, no, no. They'll do their best to respond professionally. Now, before they submitted the revised plans to DEM for the larger and higher septic system, I did offer to meet with them just to help expedite the process, because I don't like to bog down your time or their time. Now, during that meeting, we discussed the concepts and their general design of what they were going to submit to DEM. And at that meeting, I pointed out that one concern that was still unresolved was, well, the issue is that there's so much effluent leaching from the leach field that the groundwater table is going to have a mound, which is standard. It's not unique for this site. And the concern was that the mound, we wanted to make sure it didn't rise to the elevation that it would seep out onto the ground surface. So when I had met with them, they provided a detailed design, and they elevated the leach field so that the mound below the leach field was below the proposed fill, meaning they're bringing in about 4 feet of fill approximately, so that as the groundwater mounds, it will be contained within the fill. The issue that we discussed in detail then was we're concerned with not only the mound height below the leach field, but there's a transition. As you go away from the leach field, it's not a vertical drop, there's a gradual transition. So we discussed the different parameters and different points down below the septic system and on the high side. The one area of concern that didn't appear to be addressed was the elevation of the roadway in relation to that mound and the leach field. And the discussion that we went back and forth with was the designer indicated, well, the utilities in the street and the drainage lines in the street are going to act as an underdrain, so theoretically that mound will never get as high as it will be. But I pointed out that during the review process, Public Works Director, Town Engineer, and our office recommended that in all of the drain lines in the street and the utility lines in the street that there be a barrier. I believe they're proposed at 100 feet along the linear pathway of the water lines and the sewer lines. And the reason for that is we didn't want the utilities and the drainage system, the bedding for those systems, to act as an underdrain. Now, one reason for that is the drainage line goes into an infiltration system, and infiltration systems do not work properly if you have groundwater flowing into them. So basically, with the drainage system that's designed, you want to make sure that you only get rainfall. You don't want to get groundwater seeping in, because that inundates the system and it impacts the capacity. So that's the way we left it. It was still one of the unknown concerns. And when we received the official package that went into DEM, which may have been a week and a half ago, we provided a one-page memo to the town, which I know was passed on to the applicant. And it stated that in the application that went into DEM, basically we recognized it addressed the mound, but it didn't address the aerial extent of the mound in relation to the ground. And today, sometime this morning, I did receive that was requested, say a week and a half ago. And the first thing that jumped out when I glanced at it was that concern still existed. It appeared that the mound may be at or above the pavement surface of the proposed roadway. So because things are happening quickly, meaning we received the package today, within a couple of hours, I was able to take a look at it, and I emailed the engineer who sent it to me and expressed that concern. And I don't believe I've heard back since. Now, we also received, plans and calculations with the new revision date, but I don't believe there's any substantive change, via a quick look. But it would be, it would be helpful if the designer could provide just a bulleted outline of the changes since the last submission versus what we received today. Again, I don't believe there's going to be anything major, but it would save us all time if we had that list. So as it stands now, I'm just waiting for clarification of that mound elevation at the roadway.
So is that something that the engineer can address this evening?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Chris Duhamel with DePreet Engineering. Yes, over the last couple of months, our design team, Jason Claw, who you see as the professional engineer certifying on the OWTS design, and myself have met and corresponded with Crossman Engineering half a dozen times or more. And it's not something as simple as what you might expect with a mounding calculation. It's not something that we would have normally questioned or revised. There's many variables to a mounding calculation, if you will. The effluent that discharges into the leach field, that's a variable. The soils underneath the leach field itself is a variable. The depth of the leaching capacity of the soil and bedrock structure is a variable as well. And we've designed, I provided examples of 13, 14 examples of plans that have been approved and sites that have been built and have worked without failure as demonstration of our experience, the pre-engineering's experience with community leach fields and leach fields of this nature, a large community leach field as defined by DEM. So we had looked closely at Crossman Engineering's concerns and adopted many of them, but we also, in adopting the concerns and raising the field, turns out it's 4-foot raise from what was originally approved by the DEM. By raising it that 4 feet, it provides more longevity to the leach field, more reliability, more resilience to the leach field. So it's all in the order of providing a better design. And that's what we recognize working with Crossman Engineering, that we're providing actually a better design that provides for more safeguards for this design and the future owners of this system. But with that said, there are some conservative aspects that I feel are over and above what certainly what DEM was looking for, because they've approved not the original design, but this new design as well. They've approved 2 designs on the same field with the 2 different mounting calculations. For this case, the conservative design is we have a full occupancy, a full loading, a maximum loading of each home of 8 people per home every day, all day for 6 months. 6 months is also a variable where you might consider the peak wet season time, the seasonal high groundwater time from January to April, and then to move it from January to May to June makes it 6 months. Certainly the water table is not high in December. It's not high in most of January, almost never in January. It's always comes up in February when you get some of the frost melt and you get more of the rain in the months of end of February and March and April. That's when the seasonal high groundwater table is. So to have that 8 people over 6 months is a conservative analysis. To recognize that there is a floor to this system, that there's no interaction with the overburden soils and the bedrock, which is the source for the bedrock wells. To recognize that there is no interaction for that it's an impervious surface is a conservative means to analyze, and we've incorporated what Crossman Engineering had asked to create this higher mound. To recognize that the A and B horizon, the topsoil and the subsoil horizon, which are a fine sandy loam of faster draining soil, has no effect on the mound itself, that it's only silt loam from the base of the bedrock to the discharge of where the leach field is. There's another conservative method that would create a higher mound. So what I'm trying to describe is that there's a conservative base within this that isn't normally afforded, and has created a higher potential mound with all these more conservative assumptions, to the fact where it's at least one point, almost double what you might consider with a more reasonable assumption. So we've represented that the mound under those conditions would be contained within the soil. There would be no breakout, down gradient. And then now we're looking at the roadway, and there's potential breakout. Today it's defined. We had talked about this with Mr. Cabral and Crossman Engineering, we being myself and the design engineer, Jason Claw, who's a professional engineer. And we looked at utility trenches as a possible subdrain that would act just as the constructed subdrain is, and Mr. Cabral said, well, geez, you're gonna put check dams within the drain, and that can be done. That can be done if needed. It's not typically required in any other town that we work in. DePrete Engineering works across Rhode Island and southeastern Mass. But if the town of Middletown requires that, we will certainly do that. It doesn't require a check dam within the gravel base of the road, the 1 foot of sand and gravel that is used to support the asphalt. And then the cut of the road within that specific area. There's a drawdown given the cut of the road. So there's also mediating factors that would limit the spread of groundwater mounding to the roadway area. And that's something we discussed in the office of Crossman Engineering. It wasn't put in writing in this memo sent just today, because I, for one, thought it was already resolved. We showed what the mounting would be leading towards lot 11, I believe, we're calling it. And we showed that there was no breakout, even with a conservative condition. So I feel strongly that what is proposed is more protection of the groundwater, more protection of the resilience, long-term operation of the system, that there wouldn't be any concern of groundwater mounding and groundwater outbreak in any areas of this development. And we would be willing to add monitoring pipes along the roadway if that is a further concern. But in all the designs that I've completed and the monitoring that we've done on other projects, we haven't witnessed that groundwater mounding because of those mitigating factors of the more permeable soil on the A and B horizon, from the potential for utility drains, from the potential for much less than what is considered maximum 8 people per home loading rate over a sustained period of 6 months. We just don't see that in demographics of use. We don't see that in any use. And I've provided examples, some of which are in the ground 10 years without issues, without failure. So it is a system with robust redundancy, with a resilience, again, that can serve long-term the single-family home residences. So that was one issue. We did receive the DEM approval today. There was several correspondence with emails, with phone calls. Mr. Cabral's office was calling DEM and asking questions. I would answer DEM's questions, and as a result, it was approved Friday, written up today, and provided for the planning board as a record for the preliminary plan that we do in fact have DEM approval. And we're not an independent engineer, I'll grant you that, but we are the design engineers that are responsible for this design. If something does go wrong, it's on us. It's not on the town. It's not on the consultant engineer, Crossman Engineering. It's DePrete Engineering. And we will inspect the installation of this. There'll be a requirement of long-term maintenance contract and oversight. This system, as I described at the last hearing, is monitored 24 hours, 7 days a week. So if there's any malfunction of a pump, of a tank float that goes high, there is a service provider that's on site within 24 hours. There's inspections that are made on the community system. There's inspections that are made at the treatment plants, at each individual lot. This system is highly monitored from the beginning to the long-term operation of it. There's much more oversight with a community leach field than there would be with a single-family home with their own conventional septic system that doesn't have pumps, doesn't have floats, doesn't have alarms. So this system is much safer in that regard. And lastly, the planning board had asked that we remove the septic leach field from the open space, that we provide the minimum 40% of open space, and we've demonstrated that has happened, that there will be a parcel that's just for the open space, just for the leach field, and that the minimum amount of open space is met.
Thank you. Could I ask Mr. Cabral to come up again, please? My understanding is very limited on this, but my understanding is that there were two concerns, and please bear with me if I use the wrong terminology. One is mounding, which is a vertical rise, and the other is outbreak, which is a horizontal release. Is that correct?
Yes, that is. But
And-
basically, it's the transition of that.
And I know you were concerned about both of those at one time. My question is, have both of those been adequately addressed?
No. Now, if I
Could
may
you
just...
elaborate, please?
No, okay. Yeah, the reason there was the redesign is that the original design that DEM approved, there was a mounting analysis that was submitted to DEM. Now, DEM, it's my understanding that they went through their checklist. They had the mounting analysis, and that item was clear. But what they didn't do is they didn't look at the variables that were used in the analysis. And
Can I speak, Steve? I think we had this conversation. There was no requirement for mounting calculations because it was less than 499 gallons per day. So the mounting calcs were not submitted. I think I had said that. And when you had asked the day after our June hearing here, I had asked that the mounting calcs be forwarded to you, and without looking at them, I had forwarded the wrong reference mounting calcs. So I fully admitted that to Mr. Cabral at the time. They were never submitted to DM. DM never checked the mounting calcs. They never got the mounting calcs. Because unless you have a large system, mounting calcs are not required. And this go-around, because of the scrutiny by Crossman Engineering, we submitted mounting calcs with the conservative values that were asked of us that I just described. We also submitted a more reasonable assumptions of a mounting calc that had naturally less mounting, given 4 people per home, given the wet season of 3 months. And the peak mounting was a foot less than what we had described at 3.7. So I understand there's a concern with the outbreak beyond the field, and we provided that data. And now we're talking about an outbreak into the roadway, and that's where I thought we had agreement, but I've already stated that there's other mitigating.
Could you complete your response, Mr. Cabral?
Yes, in the DEM regulations, when you have an advanced treatment system, DEM has the option of requesting a mounting analysis or any detailed studies if your flow is over 900 gallons per day, not the 5,000 gallon number. And there's no doubt about that, because just last week we had submitted an application where the flow may have been 1,300 gallons per day. And DEM replied saying, oh, because you're over 900 gallons a day, we have the ability of seeking a mounting analysis. So they requested that we do a mounting analysis. So it was reasonable when you have an advanced treatment system with a flow of 4,950 gallons per day to have a mounting analysis. The reason for that is, with the advanced treatment systems, the effluent first goes through a filtering system. So the effluent is cleaner when it gets to the leach field. Because DEM recognizes that the effluent is cleaner, they allow a reduction in the leach field size. So if this site wasn't designed with all of the Advantex treatment systems, the leach field footprint would be much larger than it is. Okay, so that's one of the reasons that when there's flow greater than 900 gallons per day, right in the regulations it says DEM can request the more detailed studies.
But they did
So-
it, right?
So that's,
But they did it, right? They can, but they did it.
well, what I know is the day of the last meeting in June, we were given a package of what was submitted to DEM, and in that package was that mounting analysis. So I just assumed if I'm given a package of what went to DEM that included a mounting analysis, that went to DEM. Whether or not it went there, it still is appropriate to do it. And when it comes to the variables, I do agree that there's some subjectivity, but the variables have to be within an engineering reasonable value. And the values that were used were within reason. You know, they were selected by the designer, and we agreed with those variables. And the reason I'm here tonight is that the mounting analysis that was given to me showed that there's an issue. It's not as though I said use variable A, B, and C, or it's not as though I received an analysis that showed there's no problem. I was given an analysis that showed there's a potential problem.
Can I ask, when did you receive that?
This morning.
Okay, so, I mean, it's reasonable to suggest that you need time to review that some more. I have no issue with that.
In the perfect world, yes, but I know everyone's under a time frame.
So that being said, listen, Chris, you know I've seen much of your work and his work, and Steve, I respect you as our consulting engineer. This is not about one over the other. We need to have you looking at this and having a reasonable amount of time to review this documentation. He just got it this morning. I think as Chris pointed out, he falls within a lot of variables that are very conservative. But I still want to give you an opportunity to review it. So I hate to do this and continue this any longer, but I'm not inclined to make a decision without hearing more information from Mr. Cabral on the information he received today. I hate to do that, but that's how I feel.
Art?
Steve, why don't we have you up there?
Yes.
I'm way out of my league here, so I really have to depend on both sides and figure out what's going on. But in your 5th paragraph of a memo you sent to Ron, it said, in addition to providing mounting analysis below the leach field, we recommend that the designer compute the horizontal extent of the mound's vertical transition to ensure that it does not exceed ground levels as it transpositions behind the leach field footprint. I think I know what that, is that still something that needs to be added to this whole adventure?
That's the one last item. That's the document that we received today, the response to that.
Okay. So I'm on board, I think. Here I think we want to proceed correctly and carefully and make sure we get everything just perfect on this. It's important.
It's prudent to do
Any
that.
other comments? Joe?
Steve, my comments are, what's your view on the conservative methods and assumptions that have been made by Dupree? Do they fall within the realm of commercially acceptable or reasonable?
They're within reason, but they're not, I don't consider them to be overly conservative. For example, if the hydraulic conductivity is 5 in the analysis, that's on the high end of reasonable for this type of silty soil. It's not as though it's really 10, meaning the higher the number, the better, and they decided to go with 5. They took a reasonable range and went with a number within that reasonable range. It's not as though they took a reasonable number and doubled it. Now, one reason this is an important issue, and I just want to remind everyone, is that, and Chris can correct me, is that the original water table at the location of this community leach field, I believe, was only about 1.5 feet. So it's my understanding that that soil is in its natural state without an underdrain, isn't suitable for a leach field. But that can be corrected with engineering means. And that was corrected when the applicant installed an underdrain to artificially lower the water table. That underdrain that was installed allowed the water table to drop to, I believe, about 3 feet below ground level. And because of that man-made installation, now DEM is willing to consider a leach field at this location. So because of that, I just want to make sure it's done appropriately. I'm not talking about over-designing it. I'm just talking about using standard engineering practice. No more, no less.
I couldn't agree more.
Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I was looking at the mounding analysis, and I was noticing, and maybe you can answer this question, but one of the for 6 months, they calculated a mounding height of 3.65 feet, and then they did a calculation over 120 months, and they came up with a lower value. How does that work? I'm assuming that fluent gets added in over time, and the more time you add into it, you know, the amount doesn't go down, it goes up, you know, but.
It does. What happens is, based on the flow, the mound rises to a maximum level, and then ultimately it reaches equilibrium and it doesn't get any higher, it doesn't get any lower. So I'd have to look at what you're looking at. Now, one issue may be there are two different calculations. One is a program that just computed the vertical mound beneath the system, and then there's a secondary program which computes the horizontal spread of the mound. So I believe one reason for the different numbers may be just two different analytical formulas, but they're probably within reason. Another potential reason is that for the shorter duration period, I believe the designer used the maximum daily flow, but for a longer duration, he may have used the average daily flow. But to really give you a true answer, I'd have to see exactly what you're looking at, which I'd be glad to peek at if you'd like.
Yeah, that's a good idea. One other thing is I'm trying to picture how this thing works. I mean, the existing soil there is kind of doesn't perk well. It's kind of at a very slow absorption rate at where they have the leaching field, and they're digging that out and putting some more soil that has a better perk rate in there.
No,
Are they building it up at that point, or is that going to still, is the ground level still going to be the same, or?
no, basically, the size of the leach field has to be based on the infiltrative capacity of the existing soil. And so what they do is they size the leach field based on the capacity of the existing soil. But in this case, because the theoretical groundwater is going to rise, and the reason it rises is the soil can't absorb this water fast enough for it to spread out. So what happens is the groundwater rises, and to mitigate that, the design is actually bringing in good fill so that the leach field will be above ground. I believe about 4 to 5 feet. So where the leach field is, there'll be a hill.
It's going to be built up.
It'll be built up.
So can I just say, last meeting when we were here, there was an issue that came up and we continued. That amount of data came to be over the course of the last couple of months, and you ultimately got something today, which is not uncommon. It happens. Under a deadline, it gets in. But you need time to review it. Is there anything else that may be out there that we're missing, that you might be missing, that we might be missing? Because I'm willing to ask the applicant to continue. And they may not. Let's be honest, they may not want to continue. But in order for me to get my support, I need to hear from you on that last item. But if there's anything else, I want to make sure we include that.
Yeah. No, that was the last item. That from my role.
Thank you.
So a couple of board members have expressed a desire to have this be thoroughly reviewed before we act on this. Do others feel the same way? Yes? Is the applicant willing to request a continuance?
I did not take any courses in law school for engineering, so I'm learning on the run. But I think what I hear being discussed is that in Steve's analysis and last comment, he raised an issue in number 5, which is identified and repeated in the August 23, 2019 letter from Chris Demers to Ron Wolanski. Now, this letter responds to your last concern, and it provides analyses. You have not had time to read this and deal with it. And I understand that. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
as soon as it came in, well, within a couple of hours,
Yeah.
I did forward.
You have to speak into the microphone, Steve.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew that there was a meeting tonight, and therefore I stopped what I was doing, and within a couple of hours, I did forward my initial comments to the engineer, and I believe I copied Attorney Silva, because it was an obvious concern that there was a potential break. But I haven't gone through it in detail, but the obvious I passed on.
The only question I have is, with the exception of this issue that we're talking about, do you have any problem with the way this system is designed otherwise?
Other than the mounding, no.
Okay. So when you have a chance, you're gonna look at the mounding, you're gonna further communicate with Chris and Kevin, and I know they're gonna be making themselves available. But I just want to impress the board that a lot of time has gone into this, rightfully so. But I just wanted to make sure that the only thing left to be determined is what was sent 5 o'clock this morning, or whenever. I don't know who gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning
Oh,
to send
I'm
an
up at 5. I wasn't checking email.
So, with that, I don't have a problem with suggesting that my client wants to work with the town, wants to work with Steve. We'll agree to a continuance so that the board is not required under its rules to make a decision tonight. But I just want to make sure that we've got a lot of planning, and we're at a point now where there's only one point left that Steve has concern with, and he'll get back to us.
I think that's what Mr. Nash was trying to get at also.
Yeah.
That this is the
So
only outstanding issue.
We're looking for the 11th of September?
So my question is that enough time for your review?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
okay, does that mean that you will?
One final question. Does the public hearing continue to be open?
The public hearing is still open and will continue to be open.
Thank you.
So are you requesting a continuance, Mr. Silva? Are you requesting a continuance?
I'm agreeing to a continuance.
I think you have to request it. You can agree to it?
Yeah.
Okay, may I have a motion to continue this item
So
to the
moved.
September 11th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
A motion is made and seconded to continue this item to the September 11th meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is continued. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
The public hearing remains open. It's going to be continued, and it will still be open at the next time it comes before the board.
What if we raise more than one point at that meeting? So we have 1 point, what if we have questions or concerns? Like, how do we, what if there's
Already been
more
done. Already done that.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard this quite a lot, and all of the issues have come up, and we think we've addressed all of them except this one outstanding issue.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. We need to move on.
Yes. The public hearing remains open, and when it comes before the board again, you'll be able to speak.
Point of order, next item.
If, I'll allow you to speak, but please be quick. We need to move on. The item has been continued to the next meeting. Is there anything you wish to say?
Now, you know,
Please, let him
that's out of
speak.
order, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair.
Let him speak.
We should hold public comment until the presentation is done and then have all public comment.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We can't
The-
speak
the-
on
The item has been continued, the public hearing is open, you'll be able to speak when it's before the board again. Okay?
Still open.
Thank you. The next item is item 4D, application of JOJF LLC, preliminary plan approval for a two-lot minor subdivision of land located at 527 Aquidneck Avenue, plat 114, lot 242. Let us take a 2-minute recess to let the house clear. I hate to shut this thing. I am, I understand. and they will get the... I know. Mr. Martland, are you speaking for JOJF?
Yes,
The floor
good
is
evening,
yours.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, David Martland from the offices of Silva Thomas Martland in Offenburg. This matter had been continued from your meeting in July. This was a request for a two-lot subdivision for property located at 527 Aquidneck Avenue, plat 114, lot 242. At that hearing, or if I might just step back, prior to that hearing, there was a site visit that had been taken in which planning board members undertook a review of the property. We then had a meeting back in July and made a decision that it was probably this subdivision was best served by relocating the driveway in sort of a southerly fashion. So that required a revision to the plans. What we've done since then was to have those plans revised, resubmitted those revised plans. So there are two changes really on these plans that resulted from the prior hearing. One was to move the driveway in that southerly direction, have a common access driveway to be utilized by both lots. And the second change was to provide for a row of arborvitae along the rear property line. Mr. Santo, who lives in the back, had requested that we do that. That plan was changed. I emailed that plan to Mr. Santo at his address that he provided to me, and he responded saying, looks great. So he was happy with those revisions, so I think we addressed his concerns. So those were the two changes made to the plan. Otherwise, you know, it is a similar application. We're here before you seeking a conditional preliminary approval, which would then allow us to file for the petition for variance for the frontage issue with respect to the southerly lot.
Much better.
Yes.
Much better. Thank you.
Comments from the board?
Just, you know, now, you know, for the new lot there, coming out onto Aquidneck Avenue, I see there's some, you know, configuration there with lines attached to it. It says something about pavement, saw cut, and match. So it looks like it's coming out onto the avenue itself, onto Aquidneck Avenue itself.
That's correct. There'll be a new curb cut,
Yeah.
which will come out onto Aquidneck Avenue. If I can approach the screen.
Do you have a hand mic?
You have to turn it on.
The on button says ON, Dave.
ON? Well, there's a mute button and a select button.
I
Of
can
course,
hear
it's
you.
not an on.
Sounds like it's on, give it a try.
Hello?
Nate, can you provide some assistance?
The mute button was the one.
There you go.
Okay.
The mute button is the one that works.
So there is existing a curb cut located on sort of the northerly end of the property. That will be relocated to the southerly portion. So there will be a new curb cut installed, which will require to cut into the pavement and match that grade. And then both properties will access from that location. The curb cut to the north will be closed. So there'll only be the one
What's that bump out
access.
there? What's that small bump out there on Aquidneck Avenue there?
If I could speak,
Yeah.
James Tragley from Principal Engineering. Can we,
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
James Traglia from Principal Engineering.
Could you speak into the microphone when you
Sure.
identify yourself, please?
Sorry. So that is just for the sewer service to tie into the sewer in the street, the sewer line in the street. That bump out right there just encompasses the sewer line.
Do you have to, David, do you have to get any permission from DOT for a new curb cut? Or-
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Have you gotten that?
We don't have that yet. The application's been completed, and we're waiting to submit that.
Other comments? I have two questions.
Certainly.
You're not showing the existing trees on this drawing. If I recall, there are trees along the existing driveway.
Yes, there are some
I think
cherry
there are
laurel trees along
Three or
that.
four trees along there.
Yes.
I think this is a much better layout, but what happens to those trees?
Those trees will remain.
Well, I don't think they can. The driveway's gonna go right through them. The new driveway will go right through them.
Well, there was one tree, if you'll recall, that was in some pretty
Not-
dire condition.
Yes,
So that tree.
that tree will go.
Will go. The other trees are in decent condition and would remain.
So one tree will go, the others will remain.
Right.
So,
If you'd like us to note that on the
yes,
plan, you
please.
can certainly
I
include
would
that as a
like, I
condition.
would like that noted.
Condition of approval.
Yeah. Secondly, with this new layout, are there any easements required?
Yes, there will be a requirement to have reciprocal easements for the properties relative to the driveway access and possible utilities.
So that should also be a condition, that these easements be part of the plan.
Yeah, they would be recorded with the plan.
Thank you. Those were my two comments. Any other comments?
Motion.
May I have a motion for a favorable recommendation on this item?
Motion made,
Subject
subject to
to
the conditions we've.
conditions, including the two new ones.
And that they've met the
If-
required findings.
If I just might,
Yes.
this isn't a recommendation, this would actually be for approval, a conditional approval.
Preliminary plan.
So I need a motion for preliminary plan approval,
Motion made.
subject to all the conditions and findings.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to move items 5A, 5B, and 5D forward in the agenda since these involve applications, and we'll hold off on dealing with planning board matters for now. So the next item to be discussed is item 5A. A request of the Zoning Board of Review for review and recommendation on an application of Kevin Kirby for a special use permit to allow development of a single-family dwelling in Zone 1 of the Watershed Protection District, property located on Satuay Way, Plat 125, Lot 64.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself.
Thank you. You have to fill out a form, Joe.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Kevin Kirby. I live at 69 Satuay Way in Middletown, and I'm applying for a special use permit for a single-family home in a district, a Zone 1 district. I have received my permit from DEM, and I did have a site visit with the planning board on July 30th. I recently submitted a plan that it was requested that the calculations for the runoff be attached with the engineering plan, which I just submitted this evening. So those calculations are there, and they actually exceed the DEM and Middletown requirements for stormwater runoff. Were there any questions?
Okay, any questions from the board? BJ?
Yes, I had a question. As a matter of fact, I asked you the day of the sidewalk,
Mhm.
and it was, when did you get the DEM permit? And I think you said it was 2 or 3 years ago?
I received the DEM permit in 2017.
Okay. And my question was, it's been very, very wet since then, and I just didn't know whether it would be advantageous to ask for the DEM to take a second look. But that's just the property itself is lovely, so.
I did talk to the engineer about that, about having DEM look at it again, but he said that the calculations that they provided wouldn't change, so
Okay, thank
I don't know if that would,
you. Yeah, that was my one comment, because it was not only wet, it was, the roadway going in was, I'll use the word squishy.
yeah.
So I understand, though, you're going to be putting down gravel or something.
Yes, in addition to all the material on the site, the driveway will all be permeable, which is in the plan.
I
Thank
had a
you.
question.
Other comments? Michael?
On item number 16, it says artificial lighting. Oh, this is the DEM, I guess, conditions, I guess, you know? It says something about artificial lighting along the driveway, roadway where it crosses freshwater wetlands is not authorized in this permit. What's that about, you know?
I'm not putting any lighting in,
Okay.
but I think what they were saying, if you do put in artificial lighting, it has to meet whatever requirement, but I'm not putting any in.
Other comments? I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Or one. Rita, do we have a projection of this?
I don't have the one that is in front of you today, but
Even the earlier one would be fine.
very
My question is on the drawing that you have, the Zone 1 boundary is not shown. And this application involves building in Zone 1. So I think it would be good to show the Zone 1 boundary on the diagram.
I think it's all in Zone 1.
It's awesome.
I think the whole property is Zone 1.
The whole property?
Sure.
Yes.
That's been my experience, is that everything is in Zone 1, except, I actually think
Well,
he's
is
in
it-
Zone 2, Kevin, you're in Zone 2.
I can add a clarification. He's not in Zone 1 per the zoning map. He's in Zone 1 because of the stissing soils.
Yes.
In our regulations. it
And is
says
the
that
property
for stissing
completely in
soils.
Zone 1?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Is the property completely within Zone 1?
It would be wherever there's stissing soils on the ground, so I don't have the soils notated.
So I guess that's what I was looking for. Do you know if that's,
No, yeah, I mean, you'd have to get the map, you'd have to get the stissing soil map overlay.
yeah.
What we did on the site visit, though, everything had been flagged by DEM at the site when we went out there.
Correct. I can show you that boundary.
Well, I think,
So this, I think this is on, yeah. So this was the flagged boundary.
yeah, the flags are shown on the drawing.
Right, correct. That DEM, which they pulled their setbacks off,
Yeah.
and then the setbacks were this line. This is the line here where I have to stay within this line here based on DEM
Yeah,
setbacks.
I understand that. So, okay, if this is completely within it, there is no boundary to show. Okay, any other comments?
Just, Kevin, the plan you submitted tonight, not that it matters to me, but it looks like you turned the house a little bit?
The original plan, the house was facing due south because of the solar panels that are going on.
Okay, yeah.
And for some reason, when they did the engineering, they had kicked it this way, so I told them, put it back to
Put it
what
back
it
where
was
it belongs.
originally, which is what DEM has in there.
I see, okay.
Yeah,
So it's gonna stay where it originally was intended to be?
correct.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Any other comments? May I have a motion for special use permit?
Actually, it's a,
Recommendation for a special use permit.
so moved in accordance with the standards as spelled out on the memo dated August 14th and the findings as well.
The town planner was recommending 3 conditions of approval that the board could consider, including limiting the use of lawn chemicals and fertilizers, complying with the DEM insignificant alteration permit, which you have in your packets, and complying with the stormwater management and soil erosion control ordinances that the town has.
Part of my motion.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye?
Opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Build away.
Next item is item 5B. This is a public hearing, request of Aquidneck Donuts, Inc. for waivers from certain design standards of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, Section 521, for proposed renovation of an existing commercial building located at 536 East Main Road, Assessors Plat 113, Lot 159. And before we have any discussion, I want to remind the board that the changes that they are proposing do not meet the thresholds to trigger a full development plan review. As such, we are only considering the waiver.
Which is?
Are you getting Joe?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, this is, right?
Why don't we wait till Joe returns?
Bill, could you open this? Open the doors back up? Oh, yeah. Where is this? Thank you. Open. Excuse me. Thank you.
May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to open the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is open.
Hi, my name is Joel DeMello. I'm the contractor that's going to be doing the work on the Dunkin' Donuts. This is Eddie Andrade, he's the owner. And some of the materials that, the main one is being the existing metal panels that are on the building now. Dunkin' Donuts no longer wants to have that look, so they want to use the stucco look on the building, which is not a conforming material that you use. So that would be one of the waivers. On the front monolith is the clapboard siding with an inserted accent strips. And other than that, everything else is just going to be painted. The existing block is going to be painted. Those would be the only material changes would be the metal panels would be removed, would be a stucco system in place of that, and then the monolith would get re-sided with a hardy clapboard. That's shown on the plan. I brought some samples of the materials and the colors. I can bring them up, or if
Yeah,
anybody
please.
wants to see them.
I think people would like to see the samples.
Sure. This is the stucco panel underneath. The siding is the hardy, this is cement board product, and these are the accent strips that are shown that will get inserted underneath the course. This is for Dunkin's
Well, just,
So we
this-
can,
This is kind of heavy, so, this is clapboard and the trims.
we can pass this down.
Here,
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
this was actually done on a piece of cement board, but it'll actually be done on styrofoam and ethos. But the finish will look, that's what the finish will look like. It's actually, the store on West Main Road was just done back in May, and that store had already had the stucco there. We didn't change it, so that's why we didn't have to didn't trigger off coming before the board for any waivers. That store already had the stucco on there, but the company didn't want to see the panels. That's not in the design at this time, so that's where we're at.
comments from the board?
Well, I've been at this for 2 decades, trying to look at this as an opportunity to create something that looks like it belongs in New England. And I'll be willing to bet if I took my car tomorrow and went to Stockbridge, Massachusetts, and took a picture of the Dunkin' Donuts there, it would look entirely different. So I'm always trying to get the opportunity. I look at it in a positive way to try to meet somewhere halfway. So we get something and people say, hey, we must be in New England, look at that Dunkin' Donuts. So I always ask for that, and I don't often end up winning that particular battle, but I have to put it out there.
I have to remind you that we're only considering the waiver.
I know.
But I echo Mr. Weber's comments.
Not much you can do
Read
there.
the ordinances, read the comprehensive plan. When you do a renovation of this building, keep that in mind and make it look like a New England building. For now, we're considering just the waivers. Any other comments?
Just that, the West Main Road location is virtually identical, going to be, that's what you want to do here. Similar to what's happened on West Main Road. So I get that in my mind, I've got that.
Yes, the only difference that West Main Road doesn't have the pink and white accent strips that this one is shown.
What does it have?
It just straight clapboard without the pink and white accent
I
strips.
kind of like that better.
Yeah.
You like,
I kind of like it without that, frankly, without the neon pink and.
Come up and identify yourself. Speak into the microphone.
My
please.
name's Edward Andrade from 141 Fairway Drive in Attleboro, Mass. The one in West Main Road, we didn't put it in. And then they came back when they inspected the building, Dunkin' Donuts, and was like, oh, you missed the strips.
Oops.
But it was like an oops, and then we had asked if we could not put it here, but they were like, oh, you have to submit it that way to the town, so.
So if we
That's
requested,
their requirement.
so you have
We-
to submit it that way, but if we requested that you not put those in,
Then I wouldn't be able to put them in.
so actually, what happened was they asked me, why didn't I put them in? And I said, well, they weren't on the plan, and I wasn't gonna put something on that wasn't in the plan because
Sure.
we know what would happen.
sure.
And so they said, well, you have to do that from now on. I said, well, then you should put them on the plan. And here we
So-
are.
So I understand that
Take them out.
you have to submit it. I think there's a sense that the board would like to request that you not put those strips in. And are there any other comments vis-à-vis the waiver request?
No, I think I could, you're coming partway with us, we could go partway with you on that, so I could support a waiver.
So may I have a motion then to,
Public hearing.
oh, I'm sorry, yes. May I have a motion to, no. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this matter? No, we did. We did open it, yeah.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing is closed.
Motion to approve with the requested waiver, with the
And the
condition,
condition that,
condition that they remove the
Trim.
neon pink trim and over the facade, over the,
the trims,
whatever you called it
the
there.
pink and white
The
trims.
bump out, yes. Pink and white trims.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes.
I
Thank
just
you.
want to give a compliment to the board, because 10 years ago, we came before you for the last remodel, and at the time, they had those monoliths that were on a slant. They looked like Gumby towers. And the board said, you know, we really don't like the way that looks. You should really just do them
I
straight.
remember that.
And going forward 10 years, here we are, and that's what the company's doing now, is just making them straight. So you guys were way ahead of your time.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Don't forget your clapboard, your stucco, Sam.
The next
This
item
part we know.
is item 5D. Request of Matthew H. Lees, Esquire, on behalf of his client MDR Realty 2 LLC, for concept review of proposed building and site modifications for a commercial property located at 1235 West Main Road, Plat 106, Lot 87.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Matt Lees, representing MDR Realty 2 LLC, owner of the property at 1235 West Main Road. Thank you for considering this concept review for redevelopment of the property. The intention tonight is to have a pre-application informal review where we can hopefully receive some feedback from the board members regarding the proposed design and plan. The plan is to relocate the BMW of Newport Auto Dealership from its current location at 1215 1199 West Main Road, one lot to the north, to 1235 West Main Road, which presently houses the Cardis, and until recently also had a Sears store there. Before that, it was an auto dealership for many years. I believe, Rita, there's a picture of the current building on there, the existing conditions might help. Thank you. We have Mike Russell, the project engineer, here tonight. Tom Sicoccio from Sage Engineering, who's the environmental engineer on the project, and Mark Grenga, who's the general manager of the BMW of Newport as well. We've provided to the board this existing conditions photo. We have elevation drawings and floor plans, and we have existing and proposed site plans, which hopefully you've all received copies of. By way of some background, 1235 West Main Road was developed as an auto dealership and auto repair shop originally in 1971. My client actually believes it may be one of the oldest BMW dealerships, that their dealership at that location is one of the oldest BMW dealerships in the country. The auto dealer left the building at 1235 West Main Road in 2011. And at that time, the Sears and the Cardis moved in, or shortly thereafter, although there is still auto service that occurs in the back of the building at 1235 West Main Road. The current building, according to the tax assessor's records, was built in 1960. As you can see, it's a low concrete building without any particularly special features to it. The site itself, the land sort of slopes awkwardly toward the back of the lot. It has no breaks, no islands, no retaining walls, and no green space in the lot itself. It's just essentially a sea of asphalt. The site itself really consists of two lots, as shown on the existing conditions plan. The front lot houses the building and parking, and then that was it right there, I think. Back one maybe. And the back lot there, as you see, the large lot is mostly conservation easement, and a portion of it was rezoned to general business several years ago, and the parking was expanded into the back there. and Bailey Brook runs through the back portion of that lot. The site is also a remediation site, an active site. There was a leaking 10,000-gallon tank that was on the site to service cars at one time that were there. The underground tank has been removed, but there is still impacted soil, and it still impacts groundwater as well, and it's actively being treated right now, and there's an open DEM file in relation to that. So the plan that my client would like to implement involves taking down the current building and replacing it with a modern, viable auto dealership building that complies with the manufacturer's requirements, which are very strict and which the general manager can comment on a little later. Essentially, I mean, the upshot of it is if you don't comply with the manufacturer's requirements, you lose certain incentives and you go out of business, essentially. The building will be modernized. It will be moved back from the road. It will be enlarged, but the narrow part of the building will be, the narrow facade will be facing the street, and it will be extending back sort of easterly down the lot. The new proposed building would be lower than the Sakuchi building across the street or the Langway Toyota building right up over here, both of which were permitted back in 2011, 2012. As you can see from the elevations, the building would ultimately have 2 levels because of the slope of the land. It made sense to break it into 2 levels, with the lower level in the back. The site itself will be substantially regraded. The front of the site will be brought up so that it will be level with the road. The fill that will be used to create that regrading will in part be the building, the existing building itself will be ground up and used in part for fill. And the two levels will be separated by a retaining wall, which you can see actually in that the lower elevation there. That will essentially break the lot into 2 levels, the front level and the lower back level. There'll be greenery added in the form of islands, which are shown in the proposed site plan or parking plan, and it will be mostly all up front, where it will be visible from the road, whereas there is now no greenery in the parking lot itself. So that we believe is a substantial improvement. There will be greenery added along the northerly boundary line. There is to the north there is a residential use. There will be greenery and screening added along that northerly boundary line. There'll be an overall reduction in the number of parking spaces as a result of the addition of things like the islands and the retaining walls. Stormwater management practices will be complied with. There'll be no change in drainage patterns, and Mike Russell can speak in detail to that if anyone has any questions in that regard. The lighting will be dark sky compliant. Signage will be designed to comply. There'll be no new utilities added. And most significantly, this is with the removal of the building, it will provide an opportunity to completely remove the impacted soil that was contaminated by the underground storage tank, and hopefully close out the DEM file. Sage Engineering has obtained approval of a conceptual remedial action plan, and we understand that DEM is very happy that this is an opportunity to close out the file potentially on this site. As for permits, where it's compliant with the zoning ordinance, permitted use in the general business zone, obviously heavily commercial, West Main Road. We've applied for physical alteration permit with the Rhode Island DOT because there will be a movement of the entryway the central entry. There's three ingress and egress points to this property, one at the far north of the property, one in the center, and one on the south side, which is sort of a shared driveway with the lot to the south. And the entryway to the middle has to be moved a little bit because of the redesign of the building. But it will not be enlarged, it will just be moved. But so that is the subject of a DOT application for a physical alteration permit. There are also applications into DEM, a RIPDES permit regarding stormwater and also relative to the environmental aspects. Once we obtain those state approvals, we expect to have those approvals in hand hopefully in the fall. We will then be eligible to file an application locally here in Middletown for the development plan review process. There are, in that process, there'll be the technical review committee, obviously, and there will be waivers sought from the commercial design standards. Automobile dealerships face some unique issues, we think, with the standards in Middletown. We think those standards are probably intended more for traditional shopping centers and the like, where customers are coming and going, and you can have trees and greenery and so forth. Whereas with a auto dealership, cars sit for days and weeks on end, and to have trees in the parking lot would damage the finish of the cars, first of all. And then secondly, with a automobile dealership, unlike with a traditional shopping center, the product being sold at the property are the cars. So you don't want trees blocking the views of the cars, and also the more landscaping that's added, the less parking you can have for inventory, for service, and for customers. So there's some unique issues, we think, with auto dealerships relative to the site that warrant waivers from the commercial design standards, as well as with the building. When you have an auto dealership, generally you want a lot of glass to have a light, attractive showroom environment. And so that's the reason for the design that you see in the elevation drawings. We listed some of the waivers we believe would likely be sought with any development plan review application, and we can go over those. As I mentioned, Mark Grenga, the general manager, is here, and he can comment on what exactly the process is with BMW and the need to comply with their requirements. There are also, in addition to the manufacturer's requirements, there are practical constraints for this site which prevent compliance with the commercial design standards. For example, one of your commercial design standards seeks to have vegetative screening on all boundaries. But as I mentioned earlier, this site shares one of the southerly boundary is a sort of a shared driveway with the property to the south. So it would be impractical to have screening right down the middle of that driveway. Another example is the requirement to have landscaping around the building. In this case, there are service drives that would prevent the ability to have landscaping all around the building. And there are also some existing non-conforming conditions relative to the northerly boundary line, for example, which we hope to make improvements on, but really you couldn't comply completely with, for example, the requirement to have 20 feet of landscaping adjacent to a residential use. And then, of course, there's also business reasons, some of which I mentioned before, the need to have visibility for the inventory, the need to avoid damage to cars from trees, and the need for parking, which again Mr. Grenga can comment on, is the demands for parking. This plan represents really the minimum amount of parking that they could possibly have and still be functional when considering the needs for them to have space for loaner, requirements from BMW, actually to have a space for loaner cars, to have area to hold inventory, which they will be receiving at a set amount each month, and then the need for service. They do quite a bit of service each month, and then, of course, for customer parking. So, to, for example, add more landscaping, I think one of the requirements, 25% of the site to be landscaped. Certainly, if you look at just the front lot, the lot that you see up there now, that is not going to get to, that could not get to 25% landscaping. I think we went from 6.1% to 7% landscaping with this plan. If you were to look at the site as the two lots in total, you would go well over the 25% landscaping, actually, because much of the back lot is taken up by conservation easement, so there is a lot of green space in the back, but the front lot is not. Although, again, the landscaping is up front near the road where it is most visible, and so provides the most, we think, site enhancement. So, we think with the waivers, there's substantial improvement to what's there now, to the quality of the building, and to the quality of the site. And if I may, certainly answer any questions that anyone may have, but I also have, just for briefly, can get up Mr. Grenga, maybe, and comment on his experience with BMW.
Good evening. Do you have any questions on our...
Please identify yourself.
Mark Grenga, General Manager of BMW of Newport.
Thank you. Comments from the board?
Well, I'm glad I got a mattress out of there before you tear everything down. I'm wondering, how are you going to keep the business going while you do all this construction? It's a major construction plan, right? And destruction and construction. How do you manage to sell cars?
Well, we're in the lot, the adjacent lot to the south.
So you're going to keep plugging away there until you get this other thing done?
Well, actually, yes.
Right, okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
BJ, and then Bill.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I am concerned about your neighbors, particularly the Crystal Springs ones, the Scotts. Are you willing to share with them your plans and to get their feedback?
Yes.
That's very, very important.
Yes, and I personally wasn't involved in, excuse me. I personally wasn't involved in the rezoning of the back lot to go to GB and add the parking in the back, but my partner Pat Hayes was involved in that process, and they had quite a bit of interaction with the Scotts at that time through that process. So we anticipate that we'll be speaking with the Scotts again, and as I mentioned, I think that's an opportunity to maybe do some infill and fix up the screening along that boundary line. And we think they'd be hopefully pleased that this is an opportunity to remove all the contaminated soil as well, though we're not aware of a direct threat to the Crystal Spring water supply, but yet still
Yes.
it would be beneficial.
There used to be quite a pond in the back there, because I remember I used to ice skate on that pond as a child, and it seems to have been filled in or disappeared or something. It was just off Champlain Terrace, and it was in that area and up and back of where the Crystal Springs area is.
Can we see the two lots?
Yeah, the existing.
So, it would, the Champlain Terrace, I
Yes.
believe, is at the, it's probably a ways to the east of the end of that lot.
It's hard to tell on this little tiny insert map where you've got this site. It's very, very difficult to
Right.
tell where all of these are, because I believe, is that first one? What is the first street just off it, which seems to sort of run into the back end of the site, which would be your conservation area?
A street?
Yeah, I can't
There
read.
actually isn't, the only street that the lots are on is West Main Road.
Right, but you've got one that backs up, you can see where Bailey's Brook comes right through that area, doesn't it? Does it come right through your conservation area?
Bailey Brook does go through the conservation.
Yes, I think, yes. Do we have it shown here? Yes, it says Bailey's Brook. that whole
That's the
area tends
airport,
to be
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
very wet.
That's the airport.
And that's very
Well,
important.
the end of, right, but the end of the existing paved area
Yes,
um,
right here.
is,
Take the mic.
Yes.
Yeah, take the mic.
Yeah, I can
Take the
see.
microphone, please.
Yep, microphone.
Microphone.
right, the end of the paved area
Right,
existing is here.
yes, okay,
Right.
and,
So I think the area that the conservation easement that you're speaking about in Bailey's Brook is in this area, correct?
yes, actually, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a distance away, but that whole area tends to be wet, I believe, anyway.
Yeah, and if I may add, we're actually not touching that back parking lot. It's just the front lot that's going to be the subject of the site work.
Okay.
And there's an application to DEM for a RIPD's permit, and we have addressed the stormwater and all that, so.
The other thing that interests me greatly would be your landscaping, to make it look a little bit more attractive than what we've seen on West Main Road.
That is the intention.
Do we have a rendering?
The
We don't have a
material-
rendering that's accurate.
No,
No.
it says vehicle display, I guess they're gonna put cars.
But that's something that we would be looking for, obviously.
Yes, yeah, we attempted to get an accurate rendering. We did not get it. We have that, yeah, that has trees there, which
That
one?
is the, right, and then it shows the.
But that's not
the
gonna
island.
be there.
Well, I think you have that island in there.
No.
What's that?
Joe has a question.
Come on, Joe, Bill, and then you.
No.
Bill, and then Joe.
So Matt and,
Mark.
so you're going, I have a series of questions if you don't mind. You testified that or you said that not testified, you say that the south lot that you're operating out of now, you'll stay there while the construction is happening.
Mhm.
Do you intend on using that property at all in the future after you open up the new spot? Is that going to be,
It probably won't be necessary.
won't be part of the BMW, could be part of the group sales, but it won't be BMW? Just curious.
Correct, it will not be BMW.
So, on that, no, so you don't need, there's no zoning relief needed at all for any of this?
No, our understanding is no, and we've been in communication with the zoning officer quite a bit, and so far he's indicated no zoning relief.
Okay, good. So you also said that you would be demoing the entire building, so that's everything on that lot now, even the existing repair shop now, body shop that you do work on, the whole building?
The whole building, yeah, I believe that we may be able to use just the wall on the south side of the building. Everything on the plan from the southerly wall of the existing building going north is new.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. So as much of it as you can within practicality, obviously. So you also said, Matt, that you're not changing the grade, or maybe you didn't say that, but you also said you were going to bring the existing level up to the roadway, so.
Oh, yes, there'll be substantial regrading, actually.
Substantial.
It'll be essentially creating two.
Maybe I misheard you then, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that we're not changing the drainage patterns.
Correct.
Which Mr. Russell could speak to.
That's okay, I'm sure that will all get vetted through our engineering and whatnot, but the grade on the whole site, or that is going to come up roughly?
Basically, what you're gonna have is if we have an elevation, what you're gonna have is all of the customer-facing portion of the building, which is the showroom, offices, service drive, will be at street grade.
Okay, so that's a big,
Yeah, we're gonna substantially,
roughly how much in the back, the biggest part of the fill, roughly?
how much of,
Sorry? 10 and 12 feet, that's a big, obviously, a big amount of fill, so just curious on that, just for future reference, we'll look at that, obviously. So I think it's great that you're looking to do this, so I support a lot of what you're doing, obviously, it has to go through the process, but When it comes to the plans you've submitted tonight, I know they're just conceptual, but I understand the dealership issue of visibility and trees and getting in the way, and you want a modern-looking building. I get all that. But it's hard to see. These aren't great elevations, frankly. These are black and white for the most part. I'd prefer to see a good, robust-looking rendition of elevations that really, this is really just lines on a piece of paper, maybe even a 3D version if you could. It is hard to visualize. It's a great change considering this is what we look at now, and you are looking for a waiver of the unbroken wall waiver. So I'd like to see maybe how we could do that. So a little more work on the elevations. And while you're on the elevations, the south side, that is the unbroken wall that I think we're talking about. And that to me is just wide open for something. It cries for something. I know there's a driveway there. On the other property, you share a driveway, the south side of the long building.
Right.
So I think you need to spend a little bit of time there on elevations. No, I don't want to see a concrete wall, frankly, or a block wall. Something. I think at least for much of it that you can see from the road, might be a way of breaking it up somehow. We've done that. We've done that more recently with, as I said at last meeting, putting lipstick on a pig. The Napa building down the road here. That's going to be a long building, and we dressed it up a little bit with some different architectural rendering. So just keep that in mind as you go forward on the
So
elevations.
driving north.
Driving north, correct.
On West Main Road, passing the existing
Correct.
building,
Correct.
looking at the back side
Yeah,
of the building.
that's the south side of the new
South
building.
side of the building, right. So that, a good portion, so the existing building will come back off the road.
Yep, I understand that.
The grade will be elevated,
Yep.
but a good portion of that building will be glass on that side of the road.
Sure, but
Facing.
that's kind of the elevation thing I'm suggesting is give us a little better rendition of that when you bring it in. I'd like to see a good, right now it's just as, black lines on a piece of paper.
Right.
Really. I know it's just windows, but I think you can do better maybe with a 3D rendering or something that gives us a better view, better picture of what's happening.
Right, so you want to know how it's going to look
Yeah.
from that side, from driving north or
Yeah.
walking north on
Yeah.
West Main Road. How is that going to look? Because you're going to have a wall. There is an existing wall now where the Sears and Carty's building is.
Sure, understood.
And the driveway kind of
Yeah.
ramps down below them.
That's fine, and the other thing too is any rooftop units, you want to make sure there's a shielded, you want to, if you're going to show the building, more recently we did something with Wendy's, we were able to shield any of the utilities and rooftop units that were up there in a nice way. I think it all fits in nicely, so keep that in mind, but other than that, I fully support what you're proposing here. I'm curious to see where you go with it. Thank you.
Joe and then Mike.
Yeah, hi. I think it'd be great if you could show kind of an overlay that shows the existing footprint of the building with the new building footprint. That's easy for your engineers to do. It would be on one sheet of paper, and you'd have kind of an outline underneath.
I think it actually is on.
Do you have it in there somewhere?
It's on the proposed site plan. It might be a little light and difficult to see, but it is on there.
It's on sheet 1, Joe.
It is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
This?
it's the grayish line,
It's a
yes.
light- it's a
Oh,
light
all right,
gray
so
line.
that's it right there?
The landscaping,
All right, so if you've got that on there, then that's terrific. I just didn't pick it up.
Yeah, it shows that it will be, like I said, move back. Right now, it goes quite a bit further toward West Main Road.
Got
It
it.
will be enlarged and widened a bit.
All right. Do you have any idea in terms of, in the new plan, the new building, what the percentage of pervious to impervious surface will be? Like, today, it's, 75% impervious, in the new structure and landscaping and so forth, it'll be 50/50, or?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Mike Russell, LDC Engineering Consulting, on behalf of BMW. I think the best way to answer that question is by the statement that Mr. Lees made with respect to the green space percentage. So right now, it's right about 6% for this property, and we're only adding a modest 1% to make 7 for it. So, and that increase, as he mentioned, is on what I call the upper portion of the site,
Right.
which is visible to the road and to most passersby. And we've kind of cleverly integrated that landscape in with the stormwater management system. It's all very low-lying, as Mr. Lees indicated. For automobile dealership, you want high visibility, number one, and you don't want anything above the vehicle that might cause damage to the finish. So that's probably the best way to answer your question.
All right.
It's a 1% increase in green space, but this is largely a 90+% impervious site.
Michael and then BJ.
Okay, so on lot 87, on the existing conditions plan, now is that all going to be leveled off? That's all going to be graded and it's all going to be at the same level?
Lot 87 being the front lot?
Yes.
No, the break will be in lot 87, is that correct, Mike?
Correct. It'll be within the subject lot.
Be within that,
Can you put up
the proposed site plan shows where the retaining wall is.
Try to stand closer to the microphone,
Oh,
please.
sorry.
The proposed shows where is the retaining wall in the proposed site?
Read us.
The computer's doing something.
And what is the transition, you know, from the upper lot to the lower lot then?
This is today, right?
Yeah, that's the current.
It's locked up.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so the question is, where is the retaining wall to break the site up? This, well, it's very lightly, so actually we have a label here, but this is the retaining wall that basically splits the site, splits the building.
And what's the difference in elevation between the two?
It's about a 12-foot difference in elevation
And
from
then-
upper level, from these two floor elevations, it's about 12 feet, 11 to 12 feet, from upper to lower level. So the transition, and Mr. Gringa can explain the dynamics of how they intend the vehicles to circulate around the site. But for example, this area here is going to be not a service area, but where customers drop off their cars. It's actually a drive-through feature here. This will be obviously a ramp. So we are going to match grade in the northerly portion of the site. So we're looking to primarily fill from the southerly elevation of the building forward, and then it will all taper down and match to the northerly section of the site. So this retaining wall is needed to essentially break the grade from upper and lower level. But this drive aisle here is a ramp. It's going to, be, I don't know, maybe 8% driveway pitch up and around, and then this area here is what you see today.
And that's those parking spaces there on the below on the right side of the retaining wall, they're going to be on the same level with all the parking spaces that's on lot 14.
This lot back here?
Yeah.
More or less. It's what you see now. If you drove back there now, the relationship between the parking here and the parking here will virtually be the same.
Any drainage work back there?
Is there any proposed drainage work?
Yeah.
Yes, so we had a pre-application meeting.
Before you answer that, Michael has the floor, then BJ, and then Bill can ask a question.
Okay.
It's all right.
Okay, and then
People are in line, they need to speak. Yeah.
so So if there's a 10 or 12-foot difference, it looks like, you know, on the grading, on, I guess on that building that's down below it, on the lower grade, is that going to be part of a new building too, or is that going to be an existing building?
This is part of the new building.
Okay, and that, okay.
I think, as Mr. Gringo said, it's really the south wall is about, you know, I don't know how much reconstruction will take place there, but the south wall is kind of your existing building feature. Everything else is new.
Okay, and I guess I only have one other question, maybe two. It says, you mentioned the leaking tank. What is it leaking?
My understanding is gasoline.
Okay.
Mr. Sakosho could speak to that. He's from engineer from Sage Engineering.
Tom Sakosho, Sage Environmental. It was an old gasoline tank removed in 1998. The tank is no longer on the property, but the residual contamination is still present.
Okay, and then one other thing is the existing building is going to be used for fill to bring up the grade. Is there any hazardous material in the existing building?
We will be testing for hazardous building material as part of the pre-demolition. We'll be doing asbestos, some lead paint, PCBs and caulk. And from the environmental perspective, we don't want to put it on our client's property if it's going to cause a future issue. So we'll test for hazardous materials.
Okay. BJ, then Bill.
All right. I'm not sure this is the time to bring it up, but I am one of those that believes that landscaping adds an awful lot to a property. I'm not talking about big, huge trees. Excuse me. I'm really talking about low impact landscaping. And this is a good opportunity for our warden, for the, it's a tree warden, but to take note of landscaping and making certain that it is replanted if need be year after year. And I'm not talking about high things. I'm talking about something that's going to be attractive for people to come in, and they will notice besides the cars that it's going to look nice.
And I do agree that landscaping does add to the look of the facility. But my only concern is, and we will try to include as much as possible. My only concern is based on the restrictions on the lot size and the inventory levels that we carry currently, our current service customer base, our loaner car vehicles, we are basically at the minimum amount of parking spaces available. So, obviously, work with Mike. I mean, if we can aesthetically do it without sacrificing parking, that's the issue.
Well, Joe just made the comment that it adds to the experience of going to shop for a car, because it's a nice environment.
I agree.
So
Yeah,
that's my big thing.
Okay. Bill?
So I understand that the parking on the back, when I was asking, I see it now on the bigger plan. So your drainage plan will incorporate obviously all of the pervious surface, and you're required to do that, I'm assuming. Where is it all going, kind of a thing, and
Yeah, that's correct. So as I was about to say earlier, we've had a pre-application meeting with DEM to evaluate this site based on what's being proposed and the permitting pathway for that proposal. It's a redevelopment, quote-unquote redevelopment, obviously, as DEM classifies it, and their primary concern above anything else is water quality.
Sure.
So we had to implement stormwater practices that deal specifically with water quality because of the amount of pavement. We've included that on, they're not on this plan, but we included that on the subject parcel, and anybody that's been to the site. We'll read any chance we can bring up that existing conditions plan, please. On the abutting parcel, there are, and actually you can make it out here, there are some existing detention basins here, okay, that will serve this development. So as Matt mentioned, we're maintaining the drainage patterns, we're implementing some stormwater quality practices on this site, and we are discharging to the same storage facilities on this property, which is controlled by the BMW.
All going to be reviewed.
I'm sorry?
All going to be reviewed.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's a DEM right now.
Correct, thank you. So just one last question. While you're there, whereabouts is the existing, or the old gas tank that was removed?
I'm going to let Tom speak to that.
The old gas tank was located right there.
Right in there, outside of the building, obviously.
Yeah, right in this corner, and groundwater flows in a southeast or east-southeast direction. So it can't be located on the building.
So obviously it's all capped and gone and removed, and that's going to get filled and still monitored. Still
Yeah.
monitored, whatever the program they're in, they'll have to monitor it as long
Yeah,
as.
they're in the leaking underground storage tank program.
Perfect.
These are all groundwater monitoring wells that have been monitored for the past, since 1998.
And they'll have to be
Well field
maintained.
Yes.
Through the construction and then through the new process.
Yes.
Very well, thank you.
Other comments?
Can we get an opportunity for a second?
Oh, this is just for concept review. Just for concept review. Let me give you my comments. In general, I like what you're proposing. I do wish to emphasize the comments that Bill made on the south wall. I think you have to give some attention to that. I want to emphasize the comments that BJ made on landscaping. Be creative, make it work for you. And I want to go back to a point that Bill raised. The ordinances require that any equipments on the roof be shielded from street view. There's no waiver on that. And here I think you can be creative on doing something with a roof design that makes it look more like a New England building. I'm surprised Art didn't mention it before. But again, you can be creative here. Still have a great dealership, make it look more like a New England building, shield that equipment. Everything looks good. Any other comments? John?
Just a question for Mark. Does BMW dictate what the building looks like?
Oh, without question.
Pardon me?
Yes, without question. They dictate down to the office furniture.
You know, every corporation has their requirements. Wendy's came in and told us the same thing. Wendy's requires this. We asked them to consider something. They did, they modified it, everybody was happy. So please consider it.
Well, we certainly would consider it, and
Give it serious, give it serious consideration.
No, we certainly will. And we are a franchise as other franchises are. However, BMW as a manufacturer has a tremendous amount of control on our facility. Their core facility requirements that, if not complied with, would be a deduction of 20% of our vehicle incentive money. So I agree that we can try to work with them, but they are very strict with their design. You know, we did have to sign a letter of intent. Part of the purchase of this property, MDR purchased BMW Newport in October of 2015, and part of it was contingent on a new facility to match their BMW future retail concept, which is what we've been showing you at this point. However, they're not completely unflexible. So I certainly agree that there are some things that aesthetically, as far as landscaping and, you know, hiding the rooftops, and those are things that I'm sure we can work with.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to do anything to hurt your business, but at the same time, go back and talk with them and see what you can get from them. I mean, you know, the town has our ordinances that we have to enforce.
Sure.
And so we're asking you to take that into consideration.
And what would be the primary things that you'd want us to take into consideration, or BMW? What should I bring back to them? What are the most important aspects? The landscaping and...
The landscaping, shielding the equipment with the roof, and that
Yes.
south wall seem to be the three biggest things. Go ahead, Art.
And also, lighting.
Exterior lighting or
Yeah,
interior?
exterior lighting, yeah. It'll have to be captured on the site. You know how to do that. Because every car dealer that I go by, if I go by at 2 o'clock in the morning, the lights are on. I get it. You don't have that much of a problem with abutting commercial properties, but that's something you'd be thinking about also for the future. You want to make sure all the cars are there in the morning when you come, because you've had the lights on.
Right.
If I may ask, with regard to the south wall, is the thought that you want some sort of differentiation in the design of the south wall, or what is the thought there?
I brought it up, so my personal is that that's the waiver you're looking for, is the unbroken wall. So I'm looking for a way for you to break it up.
Yeah.
That's acceptable.
So you have...
No,
yeah.
that's as simple as I think it is.
Yeah, you'll have, I mean, it'll be glass, obviously.
I understand, I
and then-
see the site,
and then
I think
the
there might be
wall.
ways to look at it, and because of the rendition that you showed us, it's hard to visualize that, so
Yeah.
I think better elevations would be helpful to us to see that, but I understand the challenges with that. And I know much of it is buried on the back half of the lot, but you still can see some of it past the glass, so maybe we do something there that's acceptable. I'm
Past
sure-
the glass to the east, you're
Move
saying?
closer to the mic.
Past the glass to the east, and then below as it slopes down?
Yeah, some transition there. You know, the waiver from the unbroken wall is really the waiver, so I'd love to not have to grant that if you could come up with something that gives us a broken wall, broken design somehow. And I don't know if that's going to work for us, but without trying to design it for you, I think you want to concentrate on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to want it to, after this investment, we're gonna want it to look as aesthetically pleasing
doubt.
as possible.
No doubt.
Of course.
So, I'm sure that's something that
As
we
Art
can...
would say, go to Sturbridge, Mass, there's gotta be a BMW.
Yeah.
Dealership there that looks something like it. We want it.
Any other comments from the board? Did you get the feedback you wanted?
Yeah, that was very helpful, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for coming,
Thank
guys,
you
I
all, yeah.
appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
It's, we've gone through all the applications. We have some other items on the agenda, and this might be an opportunity to address a couple of them if people are willing to stay a little longer. Maybe we can deal with some of the low-hanging fruit. Let's take a look, first of all, at item 4E. This is a public hearing. Proposed amendments to the rules and regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, section 504 and section 603, and appendix B regarding street pavement width and dead-end streets in sections 405, 406, and 407, regarding required timeframes for subdivision and development application reviews. I have a question. If this is a public hearing, has this been announced? So we can deal with this this evening?
Yeah, it's been
Okay.
advertised. Yep.
Make
it's
a
on the
motion to
agenda, it's
open the
been
public
advertised.
hearing?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to open the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is open. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Are you right now making a decision upon amendments? Sorry.
And please identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Lori Bradley. I'm a resident on Barton Lane. a dead-end street, and I was just wondering, are you making a decision right now on amendments to dead-end streets?
That is covered under this item.
Alrighty, so my concern was
Well, let the board have its discussion first, and then we'll call for public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the board?
Just maybe to jump the gun from our friend that just got up, I think what we're talking about is new development, new roadways, giving these that incentive. That's my impression. Maybe that helps you, but you're still.
Yeah, I can provide a little bit of context. The board had previously considered making amendments to the subdivision regulations, which mandates how new roads will be constructed in town. And so the proposed regulations here are intended to reduce the amount of impervious pavement that is required at this time. Commonly, a developer comes in and requests smaller road widths to reduce their development costs, and commonly the town agrees to that because it is beneficial to the town to reduce the impervious pavement. So because we've been seeing that trend, the board is considering changing the regulations to allow for smaller pavement widths and also restructuring the design of the required cul-de-sacs to allow islands, again, reducing the impervious areas. So this would only apply to any new construction of roads going forward.
Thank you. For discussion, let's focus first on the street pavement width and dead-end street aspect, and then we'll come back to the required timeframes. Comments on street pavement width and dead-end streets? No comments? Everybody likes the proposed changes? Do you want one vote on this whole item as opposed to two?
You could do two.
All right. Can I have a motion to accept the proposed changes on street pavement width and dead-end streets?
So moved.
Second.
This
Motions.
is a recommendation to the town council, so that they would consider.
That they would make the changes, yes. Okay, so I have a motion and a second?
Yep.
To make a recommendation to the town council to make these changes, proposed changes for street pavement width and dead-end streets. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Comments and discussion on the required timeframes. Everybody is happy with the proposed changes? In essence, it eliminates specific reference to timeframes and references everything to what's required by the state. This was discussed at previous meetings. Any further discussion? May I have a motion to make a recommendation to adopt the proposed changes for required timeframes?
Motion made.
I just think if there's public hearing, we can still make, I don't know if they have to comment on it, they could comment.
I'm sorry, you're right. Thank you. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on this? Please. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Lisa Kinsella, Peckham Lane. I just have a quick question regarding something that happened here tonight earlier that has happened a few times. I don't know if that's part of these changes, but the timeframes of getting information to the town. It says in the ordinance that it's supposed to be 3 weeks for the required information. But sometimes it's like tonight where I think that DEM approval was a required thing for a preliminary plan, but it arrived today. And things like that have happened a few times, and it's caused a lot of frustration on the resident side of things because we don't feel like we're prepared. I'm just wondering, is that something that's being overlooked, or?
Well, it causes frustration to us also.
I'm sure, yeah, and yeah.
As you saw, we requested the continuance.
Right, and
because of
rightfully so. I think that was a really good call.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if, is it supposed to be 3 weeks, or is it not? Or is it just the just certain information that's supposed to be there, or?
We kind of required getting all the information a week ahead of time so we can review it.
Okay.
So I can provide some clarification on that as well. We, per the statute, we're required to have all of the information to certify an application is complete 3 weeks ahead of time. Once that is complete, then the application does go through revisions, potentially based on what the board hears, recommends, and so new information can come in. The board has a policy that's not in statute, but a policy that information is provided to the board within 1 week ahead of time. And that's so that they can review it. So that's what Paul was alluding to. Sometimes if that's a minor change or not something that can be complied with, then it's the board's choice to allow that to come in.
Tonight was a good example of, it was a major change in my eyes, so I requested that they continue, but there can be some stuff that's relatively minor, just a clarification. Sometimes it's a document that just clarifies and gives us that final hurdle for us to do. So I think there's discretion there, but in the case of tonight, there wasn't in my eyes, so.
Okay, so generally speaking, a week prior to the meeting is sort of what we should be thinking most of the information is in, all of the pertinent, really important information should be in. Is that fair?
Well, I would say yes, but
Okay.
if I always say to people, if you have a real interest in it, and if there's a group of people here, you frankly should be calling that office the day of, or 2 days of, or 1 day, really, because that's when things really start to move, as you saw tonight.
Right.
So if you really have an interest in it, I tell people, please make the call. That's what they're there for. That's what our staff and your staff is here for, is to answer those questions. And they'll give you all, there's no secrets. It's as much of a surprise to them as it is to us, and then it becomes to you, and then everybody gets here, and we're going, we're frustrated. Well, make the call. You know, it's a two-way street, you know, I think, in that respect, too.
Will do.
By the way, the town has a service where they send out emails right up to before the meeting on the latest things that are happening. If you're not on that list, all you have to do is sign up and
That's a town.
you'll get that distribution.
That's
Great, I didn't know that, thank you.
On the planning board website, we have a link that you can register your email address and your MailChimp blast.
I'll do that, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe you've answered my question. Again, my name is Lori Bradley. But any amendments to dead-end streets would just be on new constructions of streets, correct? It wouldn't be altering the shape, the dead end of existing dead ends or constructing islands in existing streets. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is closed. May I have a motion to recommend adoption of the proposed changes for required timeframes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you, Rita. That was item 4E. Can we move to item 4G? Review revised draft language of possible amendments to the Middletown rules and regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land to promote enhanced fire protection measures for new developments such as installation of fire cisterns and residential fire sprinklers.
It's not a public hearing.
It's not a public hearing. Board members, any comments?
I have one.
Sure, Michael.
Under the penalty for violations, it says each day of the existence of any violation shall be deemed a separate offense. Is it $500 a day?
Yes.
So on the memo, this is language that is currently in our zoning code, and the draft is on the second and third page. On the second page, which is the first page of the draft, E, subsection E, it just has a penalty of zero, or I guess blank dollars per day for noncompliance. So that's why I provided some sample language in the memo, so the board can consider what the correct penalty should be.
So is that something you want us to decide this evening?
Yeah, so this draft would just need to be finalized. The penalty and anything else that needed to be discussed should be reviewed by the board. And then if you're comfortable with the draft, then a public hearing will be scheduled. Presumably, this could be done at the next planning board meeting.
That seems excessive. I don't know. I'd like to.
That's standard. That's a standard number. I mean, it's harsh, but
It's gotta be.
it's got to be harsh.
Yeah, right.
That's how I feel. I mean, I've seen it enough times to.
Where did you get
On page, right there. She's suggesting this.
Oh, up here. Oh, yeah, I see it, right.
The other thing that the board should consider is the final page, page 3 or page 2 of
I
the
have questions
draft,
on that.
is in bold. It says these and other suggested incentives are open for discussion. Seems like the board didn't come to a total conclusion at the last.
I have comments on that
Go
too.
ahead, Bill?
But do we want to start with the penalty first? Are we going to go with 500, or do we want to?
Well, other comments on the $500 penalty?
Let's see, so when does a person get charged, and, and when does the clock start ticking for when this, and how, if somebody's charged with something and then, maybe they're not aware of what they're doing, and then how much time do they have to correct it, I mean, is it possible? I mean, maybe it might take months to correct an issue, right?
It can get messy.
I mean, that seems,
It can get messy.
doesn't that seem like, I don't know, I mean, somebody would just throw up the towel and say,
Well, it gives you leverage. I think it gives the town some leverage if we have to, if somebody's incurring fines and they're not complying, then we can continue to accrue that number, and then ultimately, there's some leverage that we use for it. Chris, maybe you can give a better example.
Well, before we get to an example, the current language says, a fine not to exceed $500, which gives the authority to make the fine of $500 or back it down as necessary. So in your example, Mike, if there's a scenario where the violation has been documented, a fine has been issued, and they're making efforts to correct it, it's unlikely that they would continue to fine at $500 per day if the efforts are being made. But if they were not making efforts to correct it, the opportunity would still be there to levy the fine of $500 per day to incentivize the violator to fix it. So, I mean, we have to just sort of look at how it's worded. We don't want to take all the teeth out of the ordinance and make it, softball. But we also want to make it so that some discretion can be exercised by whichever group is, pursuing the penalty. So I would suggest that, a fine not to exceed portion is valuable language, and it preserves the option of hitting with a meaningful fine.
Any further comments on the fine? Is the not to exceed language acceptable to people?
Yeah. So I would suggest we take that
It's fine.
that language and just move it into that section, Rita. That gives us a consistency with what's in the other part of it.
Okay, how about the other point?
You okay with that, Mike? Oh, go ahead, you can go ahead.
Still on the fine?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Who determines, who levies the fine and who collects it and stuff like that? I mean, how does that work?
So if it's a violation of the zoning code, the zoning officer determines if it's a violation or not, and then can issue the notice of violation. And then it would go to municipal court, and the municipal judge determines the amount of the fine.
Okay.
Okay, Bill, okay, any other comments on the fine?
Not on the fine.
Any other comments on the fine? All right, the second issue, Bill and then Joe.
Last page, the incentives that were open for discussion. I'm going to suggest that items B and C, they be combined in some capacity, Rita. They seem to be saying the same thing, but differently. I mean, we're going to allow for a reduction in the required paved road width. And then in the next section, we're going to reduce the maximum length of a road. So I think we're saying the same thing. I think the language can be a little clearer. To me, I had to read it 2 or 3 times to to get to the point where I thought it was saying the same, I think we can say the same thing twice, so maybe you could revisit that. Okay, and does that sound fair to you all, the rest of you?
Yes.
Before we go too much further? The other item is D, fire department plan review fee shall be waived for any residential structure. I'd like to see also the permit fee, it's not a building permit, it's I would just say permit fees, all permit fees, rather than, I would say plan review and permit fees should be waived for the installation of the sprinklers. Because I'm not sure if it's a mechanical or a plumbing permit, frankly, it's a little confusing right now.
Okay.
So I would like to change it to say, plan review fees and permit fees, and building permit, well, I think and permit fees is best. Or construction permit fees, installation permit fees.
Building permit is the umbrella term for, there are
Okay.
multiple fees underneath the building permit.
Okay, fine. So, and building permit fees should be waived. I think it's fair if we're waiving plan review fees, we waive building permit fees and plan review.
So I had a question there. Is that just to incentivize the
Yeah,
installation of them?
That's my whole thing here, Joe, is, you know, we've got to give incentives for people to want to do this, and
Right.
people are
That
going
was one of my questions.
to put those in, that's exactly why. So that, and the only other item that I saw that I think might require would be E, I guess. The development impact fee for fire facilities and equipment shall be waived for all dwelling units, because we are suggesting that any standalone home that somebody is going to sprinkle, single lot,
Impact fees are only assessed on new units.
New construction.
right, so new construction, if somebody's building a new home on a lot, standalone lot,
That's what this says.
so it says that, okay, all new dwelling units, okay. All right, that works for me.
Okay. Any other comments? Art?
Well, what if somebody lives in a house that's been there for 20 years and wants to put a sprinkler system in? What are we going to do to help them?
Well, they're not
What
getting
should
an
we do?
impact fee.
Yeah.
There's no impact fee there, but we could waive the fees. I mean, it's not much of an incentive, but I'm in favor of that. Anything to incentivize and allow people to do this. Retrofitting is a whole nother animal.
Yeah, when we were discussing this, when we had the workshop, it's recognized that retrofitting is a lot different from new
Whole nother
construction.
animal. And I don't want to discourage it, but we could put
And,
something
and
in
and in
there.
fact, this was coupled with cisterns for new development. So I think this is addressing just new construction.
This is new.
If we want to deal with retrofitting, we should do that separately.
You want to do that later?
I think we have to.
Okay. So then,
We have to.
should we continue this with the changes?
No, I think.
That's one of my questions too. What if you're putting on an addition to an old house? And, you know,
I think the best we could do then at that point is add language to waive the permit fees. There's not much else, because there's no other, there's no impact fee for large additions, right? Right, so I don't know what else we could do.
just a question.
I think it's a good one, but I'm trying to find ways to incentivize and without breaking the bank.
Chris, in the interest of moving forward, would it be okay to approve this for new construction and then address separately retrofit or, as Joe suggested, an addition?
Absolutely.
Modification, an alteration to an existing structure?
Yes.
So in the interest of moving forward, I'd like to say, let's focus this on new construction. And with that in mind, let me ask, are there any further comments? Michael?
For clarification, we're sort of waiving permit fees. Now, is that for the whole project, or just?
For the installation,
Just,
waiving, what are we saying here?
it's like we're saying with the fire department's plan review fees and, what fees are we waiving,
The installation for the sprinklers.
Sprinkler
We're not waiving the full building permit fee.
Sprinkler installation.
Although I'm in favor of that.
I think that's what I was understanding. There are multiple fees within a building permit. The fire plan review
So-
fee is one specific one. The building permit fee incorporates mechanical,
Interesting
electrical,
concept.
others.
We're gonna get pushback on that, but I tell you, so what the average building permit fee is probably $1,000?
It's based on a percentage of the cost of the construction.
Probably $1,200, $1,500. You waive that, and that incentivizes somebody to put a sprinkler in, because the average sprinkler system is going to cost you about $5,000. That's what it cost me, that's what I've said before, $5 or $6 grand for an average single-family home.
But
Sure.
does the town engineer require fees, to get his consultant, pay his consultant engineers and stuff like that? I mean, if we're waiving those fees, does he still have the money to, hire Steve Cabral, to look at his designs?
Doesn't require any of that for a single-family dwelling unless.
This is just subdivisions and new developments, right? So we have to, if you, again, this is the art and science of reading ordinances. This proposed revision relates to regarding subdivision and development of land, right, for new development. So it's not really focusing on single-family homes. It's for a development or a subdivision for multiple dwellings. And the language speaks to, that these things are available when all dwellings incorporate this thing. So we're talking about, subdivisions, major or minor.
Yeah. Places where cisterns might be required.
Right,
Yeah.
so, and to Bill's point, that actually could be significant if you're looking at, like we were talking about tonight, 11 dwellings. Inspection fees could be significant in a project like that, if they would all include these. I think in D, with the plan review fees and building permit fees, as Bill proposed, we could just drop in the word relevant, building permit fees, so that it's focusing simply on the stuff related to sprinkler systems, if it's so broken out. But I don't think we should be really, well,
I think the sprinkler systems should be inspected too,
nobody says they're not
inspected.
gonna be inspected, they
Well, it's still
should be
gonna be
inspected
inspected.
without a fee.
It's still gonna be inspected, that doesn't, it's still required to be inspected. That's interesting to me, the concept of waiving the building permit package fee, that's a pretty good incentive, because we determined that the impact fee is about $1,000 for right, the fire portion is about 900 and change, I think, is what we determined last time. The fire portion of the impact fee, as it sits now, is about $900. And if you're giving back $900 plus plan review fees, if you give back all the permit fees all the building permit fees, you're probably gonna give back about $2 grand. So now you're at about $3 grand, and now it's almost a doable thing. But you're gonna get pushback from.
The fire department, right?
No, you won't get pushback from the fire department, because they're still gonna do it. You're
Yeah,
gonna get pushback
they'll
from
like it.
it's revenue.
It's revenue,
It's
yeah.
revenue that we
Revenue's the
lose.
issue.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But, I mean, there's gotta be a happy medium here. That was the whole discussion on incentivizing people to install residential sprinklers in these developments. We're giving them $3 grand, roughly, to put a sprinkler system in that costs $6 grand. That's a pretty good incentive.
And they might also get some insurance breaks too.
But definitely.
Oh, they would.
We've
yes,
talked about that.
absolutely, yeah.
So I would say, let's put it in and talk about it. I say leave it as all building fees on those houses. Construction-related building permits.
Let's put that in there, but can you check to see what the impact of that is
Yep.
before we,
How much incentive are we talking about?
yeah.
Yep.
So let's put that in, but hold off voting on this one.
I'm fine with that. I would say also that, and I agree with Chris on this is in this rules and regs for subdivision of land, but we also did talk about at previous meetings, going back, revisiting the retrofit, and then the standalone single-family dwellings. And that would have to be revised through an ordinance, a town ordinance, not rules and regs, but I'd like to keep that on our radar for discussion.
So
It's
let's
a good
revise
public
that.
policy piece, Bill, I mean, in terms of, if somebody's doing a remodel and they choose to install sprinklers, should we, as a community, promote that?
Absolutely,
Right? And
good point.
there's a lot of good common sense
And
arguments
that's
to be
not,
said.
it's
Yes.
another discussion, but
Yeah.
we can support that, but that's a good starting point.
Okay, so let's include that wording and get some feedback on how others in the town feel about loss of revenue. But certainly, I agree with Bill that it's a great incentive to put them in, and that would be good.
Yeah, a simple way to see what the impact would be, take a look at in the last 5 or 10 years, the average number of new house permits issued, do a little math, X times that, you'd come
Yeah,
up maybe
somebody
with a
can
revenue thing.
make a quick calculation. Okay, so we'll table this one for now.
I'd even settle for like a 50%, I mean, I wouldn't say that now, but let's start with all of it and maybe give a percentage, you know? But that's a good point, though. Thank you all.
We still have some usable time. How about item 4F? Recommendation to the town council on a proposed amendment to zoning ordinance, Article 4, Section 400, definitions regarding the definition of building height. I believe this is simply a matter of complying with state regulation.
You change the law again.
Yeah, so this is just a matter of bringing the town in compliance with state law. Rita, do you have anything to add on that?
No. The board should review the draft and provide a recommendation to the town council.
So I think we're just going back to what we used to have, which is on our last page. We're going back, this is how it used to read, but when the law changed, you understand what happened there? The law changed a year or so ago to require flood zone
Yeah, right.
measurement for building height.
Yes,
We
yes.
said, geez, now we're going to have buildings that are 50 feet high
Yeah.
in the flood zone.
Yeah,
So we reduced the height in the flood zone.
yeah.
Well, the legislature this past year went back and changed it back to the old way. So that's in effect what we're asking to do, is go back to the old way of measuring.
Well, one of the changes that was made was allowing the CRMC maps to be considered, not just the FEMA maps. So these are state maps that project sea level rise in a different way than FEMA, and so now the applicant can use that map as well. So that's what that CRMC SDE 3 sea level rise.
Has Jack Kane seen this?
I can't say for sure.
So I would say I think it's important that Jack sees it and gives us his opinion on it. He's the one who has to enforce it, make sure it's right where it's at for him. I think based on that, we could move it to a public hearing, no? Okay, do we need to wait on that?
No, you can do
Does
that.
this need to go to a public hearing?
Yeah, well, it's gotta, does it have to go to a public hearing?
Why
I
does
think
it?
so, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's going to be an ordinance change, part of the zoning ordinance change, so we're gonna need to do a public hearing.
But the town council will do a public hearing.
You
Do we have to do the public hearing too?
You recommend it to the town council, and then they kick it
They
back.
do the public hearing.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't think we do.
That's right.
I think we both do, actually.
I'm actually
Both
surprised
sides?
that's not. Usually you do as well, but.
I think we do both.
Okay.
Why,
I don't think so.
why do we have to pass it to them and tell us that we need to have a public hearing? Why don't we just do it ourselves and say we had a public hearing, and here it is, folks, have a nice day? I mean, we save a couple
Well,
of months.
I think they are required to have a public hearing.
Well,
Town
they are.
council,
They
town council is
definitely are.
They
required.
will when they vote on it, yeah.
Yeah, an
Yeah.
ordinance, any ordinance requires 2 readings at the town council.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, do you want a motion? Or do you just want to schedule a public hearing after talking with Jack Kane?
That's fine.
Want to do a motion, just to be safe?
Yeah,
Vote-
go
move
ahead.
We're
that
gonna
we-
vote, yes.
Go ahead.
Move that the proposed language gets reviewed by the building official and a public hearing is scheduled.
Do I have a second?
Well, I'd like to add to that.
Go ahead.
Pursuant to consideration on September 11th.
Okay. That's okay with me.
Put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So we amend that just to include the date,
Yeah,
have it
yeah.
ready for next week.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yep.
So do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. There's one other one that I would like to bring up. I don't know why this was not on the agenda, but it was in the package, the one on mixed use. It was not on the agenda, but it was in the package. I labeled it 5H.
We discussed this at our last use table
Yes,
subcommittee
I know it,
meeting.
yes, and I'd like to hear, I'd like to hear that discussion.
I don't remember what it was.
Well, the
here.
changes are reflected in it.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So could I ask that we go to a consideration of the revised, or the proposed amendment to the mixed-use development project? Because I think it's important to get this ordinance on the books.
Well, I think it's extremely important because you've got a consideration now of a major project in the West Main corridor.
Yeah, yeah,
And with this in hand,
yeah,
that really cements a very viable option for that property, so.
yeah, so,
We had a lot of discussion on this, if I remember.
We liked it. We got that.
I think we did like it. I think we had, so what happened was is we made some changes a year or so ago, and then a couple of people came, I think you sat down, Paul.
no. What happened was we actually considered the draft of a mixed-use ordinance, and we passed that.
Passed, yeah.
Okay? And then one of the attorneys
Right.
came back to us and said, you really have to consider some changes because it goes contrary to good business practice. And he met with Ron and me, and we agreed, and that's when we moved it to your subcommittee to consider.
And we looked at it, and it looks like we made some changes. And I'm just
Yeah,
trying to find-
can you just look that over, Bill, and see if these changes reflect what you did with your subcommittee?
Yeah, I guess the only, it was under prohibited uses, right?
Well, the other important one was under the time limits of performance standards. Those were
Hours.
critical ones, yeah, the hours of operation.
Yeah, we decided to strike that.
I remember this.
Right. Yeah, Rita, did you sit down in that meeting?
Yes.
And do you recall our notes? I know you made some good notes on that. This reflects that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, that the changes that are indicated are consistent with the feedback we got from the attorney.
That's fine, then, I'm
Yeah.
good with that.
There were a number of changes considered. These were the ones that the
Spend some
board
time
wound
on
up
Yeah.
accepting, and it resulted in just the elimination of some language.
So with that, are people willing to move this item this evening? It's very important, I think, that we do it.
Sure.
Okay, may I have a motion to recommend the proposed amendment to zoning ordinance 27A mixed-use development?
Make a motion to approve the changes made to this ordinance and forward it to the town council for consideration.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to recommend these the proposed amendments to the town council. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Very good, that's good, I'm glad we moved that. I think we've done yeoman's service tonight. So I'm gonna move on to item 6, and we'll hold off on these other planning board items. Item 6 is the update status. What's that? This we need to discuss that before we go to public hearing.
Okay.
So I want to save that. I want to hold off on that.
Landscaping?
Yeah. We have to discuss that before we go to a public,
Okay.
probably go to a public workshop or something. But I don't want to discuss that tonight.
Can we just move it to a public workshop?
Yeah, we
Just to
can.
move it out off the
Sure,
agenda and
sure,
to a public
sure, we
workshop?
can, yes, okay.
Which one, the historic business or landscape?
The maintenance,
5E,
5A.
5E.
Move it,
Landscape.
move it to a public workshop.
That's minor reading, come on.
What's
Why do
that?
we need to do that? I mean, it's, to me, that's a lightweight guy, you know?
Paul seems to think that there's some discussion to be had there.
I think the planning board needs to discuss this unless I'm missing something. If everybody's in agreement, that's great. I just didn't want to assume that.
Well, I guess my other question, if we're gonna do this, has the tree warden reviewed this and we have his green light?
Yeah,
He's good to go with it?
yes.
For this, again, it's a change to the rules and regs of the subdivisional land, so you would schedule a public hearing, which could happen at your next meeting if you
Yeah.
choose.
So let's move this to a public hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see, if it's already been looked at by the tree commission and the tree warden,
They have looked at it, yes,
this is what they're proposing.
Have you seen
yes,
this-
it's
the
consistent.
draft? We haven't received any comments from the tree commission, so I just wanted to
Well,
make
we
sure
have
they-
through BJ.
Through BJ, okay. They've seen this draft?
They have talked about it, and there's a meeting on Thursday, I can bring it up again. And Alan Kirby was okay with it as far as the last time I spoke with him, which was at that last meeting. But he's been away for about a month, so. But the committee thought it was a very good idea.
Is a tree warden a paid position?
No, but he does submit to the town, if the council or the town asks him to do something, then he can submit a bill for his hours, and then he's paid by the town. But he said to me he doesn't always do that. Sometimes he does it gratis. But for something like a development, I think that there should be some type of a set reward for his services, or bond or something, or the developer would pay for his services.
So he's seen it. I'm generally okay with it, but where did this come from? Is this something?
came from the-
Basically because the tree commission has been up in arms for about 2-3 years, because they have looked around the town and seen what they have made as a judgment for a development, and then
Understood.
seen that it hasn't been carried through,
That
particularly
makes sense
with
to
the
me.
landscaping.
That makes sense
Yeah.
to me. So,
Yes.
and you've developed this memo, which I've scanned, honestly. I didn't review it, but and this has been, you and Ron, you discussed with the town engineer beyond.
So no, so this is in a preliminary draft form, so the planning board would have to hold a public hearing, and we would solicit comments
Let's
from
just do that next month.
more
Well,
staff.
my understanding is that there were two factors that motivated this. One was the maintenance of landscaping after the first year. You know, they're required to
Yes.
have the bond posted for a year, and everything is fine for 1 year, and then suddenly it stops and looks like hell. Okay, that was one of the factors. The other was when we've just had two situations where a landscaping plan was approved and contractors went in and did something different, took out trees that were supposed to stay. This was supposed to address both of those things.
Yes, both of them, excuse me, but both of them, one was Chase's Lane,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then the other one was the Grange.
The Grange. Yeah.
And the land was clear cut when it wasn't supposed to be on both projects.
So this is supposed to address both. There should be some kind of security deposit that protects against clear cutting or, you know, making sure it's installed properly. And then there should be some, in fact, one of the questions I had, if this is supposed to guarantee long-term maintenance, what good is a 1-year bond? It should be something that lasts for 5 years, maybe.
Well, Paul, if I may, if it
There's
lasts
a
for 5 years, why don't we just make it for 10 years or 20 years?
Well, whatever.
To me, this seems like overreach, to be quite honest.
There's a statute, I believe there's a statutory limitation as to how long we can hold a bond. So the way we can enforce this, you know, to do as the plan says, put in these trees or preserve those trees, the statute only allows us to hold that bond for a 1-year period. So unfortunately, unless we take this much further up the ladder, we can't push it.
But usually when we approve an application, there's some kind of a maintenance plan in there
Yeah.
that the applicant is supposed to comply with. So whether the bond is there or not, right now, the way it is now, the zoning officer could go in and say they're not in compliance with maintenance. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what this would do is, say, the tree warden could go in and do that, who is more familiar with the landscaping maintenance activities. And maybe that's adequate to make sure something is properly maintained, or better maintained at least. So anyway, those are the two things that this was supposed to address, as I understand it.
Well, at the tree, before our next meeting, the tree commission will have a chance to comment further, knowing what you just said.
Yeah.
And I think it's still ripe for a public hearing. There's no reason why we can't do this in public. I mean, there's no secrets here, right? There's nothing.
Right. So you're going to bring this up at the tree commission next meeting, and we can
Thursday.
schedule a public
Sure.
hearing or workshop? Does that have to be a public hearing?
I think it says
Public hearing?
public hearing to formally adopt amendments and forward to the town council.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll advertise it as a public hearing prior to the next.
So we schedule a public hearing on this.
Yeah.
That can be part of the next planning board.
While we're on that same
I'll have to
subject,
double check the timeframe, because the next planning board meeting is only 2 weeks away. We might not have
It
enough.
need not be its own special
Yeah,
meeting.
it does not need to be a special meeting, it can be part of a regular
Yeah.
planning board meeting, but,
It may not be the next meeting.
when I
because
look
the-
at a calendar, it might not be September 11th, it might have to go to October.
Excuse
So-
me, Rita, could you give me 5 copies of this so that I may take this on Thursday? I'll pick them up this week if I may.
Do you need a motion to schedule a public hearing? Do you need,
I'll take one.
may
So
have,
moved. Can't hurt, right?
may I have a motion to schedule a public hearing, excuse me, on this item?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
second,
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Now I want to move to item 6.
Okay. Just trying to hang it out for you.
Does anyone have any comments on item 6, the status report on ongoing project? Any comments?
We're all working hard.
Yes, we are, I know that. And everybody appreciates it, too. Anything to report on rural village district? Anything happening there?
well, everybody's begged off until after Labor Day, claiming they're busy going to New Hampshire or doing other things. But after Labor Day, I will personally go to each of the 2 principals we're trying to get information from, and they will either give me some information or pay the consequences.
Okay, thanks, Art. Use table, thank you for dealing with mixed use.
Yeah, and I think we have another one scheduled somewhere.
So you're going back to LB right now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's September 3rd.
Marijuana regulation.
We had our first meeting a couple of weeks ago. Peter Regan was there, myself, Paul, Bill Nash, and 2 individuals from the anti-drug coalition. And we had a million questions about what's going to happen if the legislature passes for recreational marijuana use. And we do have a consultant on board that has a lot of experience in this. And Peter explained quite frankly it's a zoning issue. That's all it's going to be for DBR. Is going to regulate what they can sell. And if you are of age, you're going to be able to walk in there and buy what they have. And it's, our whole sole mission is zoning, where we're going to put it and the conditions around it.
I can add to that, Dwight Merriam, who I believe one of the consultants, or the consultant, has a meeting scheduled with Peter Regan for tomorrow, which they're going to explore the sort of the zoning permitted uses or where it might require special use permit, so on and so forth. That meeting is scheduled for tomorrow.
Is that something that our subcommittee chair could attend if he's available?
I can get back to you on that.
Oh, well, get back to John.
I can get back to John.
Yeah, no problem. I am off tomorrow.
Okay.
So if got some errors, but
Okay, I don't know what time the meeting is scheduled for at the moment, but
Okay.
what my notes also indicate that the intention of the meeting was to create a spreadsheet, I think, along the lines of a use table.
Yep.
And then, we circulate that back amongst the subcommittee and, continue moving
All right.
forward. John, if you want me to send you an email, I can do
Please.
that. And I'll find out from Peter whether it's, a meeting that would be most productive with 3 or 2 or however it might be, but I can respond in the morning.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Airport zoning?
Rita, can you send me?
Yeah, hi, Mr. Chairman, we had our first meeting, about three weeks ago? Mike, BJ, Chris, and I, with Ron to review the draft airport hazard zoning regulation to bring us in compliance with the state. So we were supposed to have our follow-up meeting last week on the 15th. That's been pushed till, is it next week, BJ?
Yes, I think so.
So, yeah.
About a week from Friday or
Yeah,
something.
we're making progress on it, and,
You're going to come up with a proposed overlay, is that the idea?
well, we've looked at other towns in Rhode Island that have airports like Block Island and Westerly, for example, and created our own draft that's kind of I don't know if you want to call it a hybrid of those, but, kind of takes into some of the same considerations other towns have looked at. Height, how far the protection area extends from the runways, et cetera. So, I sent out an email, Mike, you responded to some of my thoughts last week or two ago, and we're just moving through it.
Okay. Thank you. Tree Commission?
Well, we have a meeting on, excuse me, Thursday, and I will present this to them and get their opinions and get back to everyone as to how they feel.
Very good.
I think they'd be very pleased.
Open Space and Fields?
I attended a meeting on the 21st. I guess there was a presentation there. Somebody was making a presentation about the issues related to beach closures, and they're looking at the, I guess the Mayford River areas, and looking for sources of contamination and so forth. That's what the presentation was about anyway, so it was for information. So I just walked in on that to start off with, and then, so then they talked about the drive-in, for the new soccer fields, and they had I guess they selected a, configuration of the fields, and there's some, I guess there's they requested bids on, for leveling off some areas and bringing in some fill and constructing the fields. And I think those bids, those RFPs are supposed to be coming, the quotes are supposed to be coming in September, so I guess the town engineer will receive those quotes. And then they were talking about a farming RFP. I guess being new to the meeting, I wasn't sure what that was about. I think it had something to do with Tibbetts Nurseries, and they had looked for somebody that might be interested in farming the land, and apparently they got no takers on that. So right now it's just being covered over with a pollinating mix. And then they had a discussion on a dog park, a proposed dog park. I guess they had, one person had done quite a bit of research, talked to somebody in Portsmouth who developed a dog park up there, which is apparently very successful, and looking at that as maybe sort of as giving them some ideas that might be working for another town. So,
Great.
yeah.
Thank you. Conservation Commission?
Yeah, I had a double whammy on that one. They brought up the Kirby matter at the last hearing, which I recused myself on, and so that came before us, I know, tonight. But we're just plugging away for the next one.
Quidneck Island Planning Commission?
working on the West Side Master Plan, and the Waters program, actually where I live, they're going to do a demonstration project on one of the, whatever you call them, detention ponds. So they've got some projects going there to improve the water quality of the island.
Very good. Upcoming meetings, we have one September 5th. This is on the Atlantic Beach District overlay. This is a very important one. I ask everyone to make sure you prepare yourself well for that. And then our regular meeting on September 11th.
On the Atlantic Beach District overlay, I have, probably tomorrow, I will have a draft ready based on all of the public comments that we received that I will distribute to you so that you'll have a week to review it before the meeting.
Email?
Yeah, I can give it to you by email. If it's not tomorrow, it'll definitely be by Wednesday.
Very good. Any other item that anyone wishes to bring up?
Well, I do. We have a case here where we've had at least 2 projects where the landscaping plan has not been followed, and we're going to fix that. However, we have a project at the Grange building where windows were one of the most important parts of the exterior features, and the developer was not following the plan. So my question is, who's the police guy in town, or the sheriff, that's supposed to be monitoring, making sure that specifications like windows are done? I mean, that's...
I'm a volunteer, remember? It's a building inspector.
That's kind of important, so I just point that out. I don't know who found out about it or saw it, but it was brought to the attention of the town.
So that would be the second violation that, so what's happening? I mean, where's the enforcement?
So that issue was caught by the building inspectors and was brought back to our attention, and so this will be before the board next meeting for you to, September 11th, before the planning board.
2 separate items.
What will come back to the board?
They need to revise their landscaping plan, and they are going to make revisions to their building elevation design as well.
So does that mean the previous approval that was given is voided?
I should think it would. Well, the landscaping, they can't replant something that is gone, so they have to make revisions to the landscaping plan, because the landscaping plan said trees to remain, and they're no longer there. To the facade changes, you can, I don't actually know the specifications of what he's proposing. There are 2 situations that he could come back to the board with, either propose to make an alteration or replace what was changed back to its original condition. So I believe that he is requesting a change to what was approved.
So the building inspector noticed a difference from what was approved and brought it back to the planner? And so this will come before the planning board again?
Correct.
And we will be looking at both of those items, the landscape plan and the whatever revision was made, and we have the option of altering our approval to accommodate his change, or we can go back to the original design.
So the reason it's coming back before you is because the change is altering the commercial, it doesn't meet commercial design standards, so basically it's coming back to request an additional waiver from the commercial design standards, which would...
So it's not, is it that it's violating commercial design standards, or it violated what we approved as design?
No, it violates commercial design standards, so that's why it comes back before the planning board.
Can I ask, that which he did
what are the
violates?
consequences for this?
Yeah, are there any penalties?
I mean, they violated what the plan was, so they just walk away and come back in and see us and say, oh, we made a mistake, we're gonna do this or do that?
Asking for forgiveness, and that's always easy, as we know, but
And you can
it's
say
certainly
no.
on notice that we're aware of it, and we're not happy about it if they're watching us now. And they're on notice that they better come in with a plan and ready to explain themselves. They run the risk, I think, of continuing construction and having this board say, go back to where you started, you know? And obviously, you can't put plants back where they belong, but...
Can the board revoke its approval?
You can tell him that he has to construct the way that it was approved in the first place.
Yeah.
So if he comes back and asks for a waiver, where there wasn't a waiver before, then what you're
We
saying
can
is
deny it.
that you can deny it, and he has to put back what was originally there.
That's what we should do.
Well, I just hope they're on notice that,
I do want to mention that that application is not on tonight's agenda, that this discussion should happen
Okay.
next planning
Well,
board meeting.
I'm just learning about this, and so I want to find out what's coming.
it's coming and I think
Okay,
you
anything
explained it
else?
right.
Anything else come up before the board? Motion to adjourn?
Motion
Second.
to adjourn.
Mine was a question. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
You hit the magic number.
Meeting is adjourned.
We